Yun-chi seemed to understand Yun-woo's feeling when he saw Yun-woo's clenched fists and lost expression. Girl, don't put too much pressure on yourself. As you've been strong enough to kill a third-level evil beast with your strength in this age, you are pretty good. Pretty good? Yun-woo grinned coldly and a chill flashed across her eyes. For the enemy who wants my life, I am no different from an ant. I have died once. Since God has given me the chance to rebirth, I will cherish my life and won't let anybody determine my fate. Speaking of this, Yun-woo raised her eyes. She looked at Yun-chi's shocked eyes and said coldly, so, don't judge me by my age and strength. It is just an excuse for keeping still. I don't want to be such a person. In the eyes of those who wanted her life, her current strength was not strong enough. She didn't need to give herself any excuses. She was really too weak, which was the truth. However, these words made Yun-chi speechless. Died once? Did she mean the thing Yun-chinger, Yun-shinger and Yun-lingshui did to her last time? Or the time when she was in the forbidden area? Or the event that she was poisoned more than 10 years ago? Anyway, she had made it clear that the person who wanted her life must not be a big shot. Was that the reason why she hid her strength? Yun-chi laughed happily after a while, with a trace of appreciation in his eyes. Girl, you are really different. You will certainly stand on the high position that everyone respects based on such belief. The old man knew very well that this girl was unusual. He didn't ask more as she showed her strong will. He just needed to understand her in his heart. And he knew that the day she presented her strength in front of him must be her strongest day, when she accepted him as her grandfather and accept the whole Yun family. Soon, they arrived at the door of Yun family. Grandpa, since I was so badly injured this time, shouldn't I need to lie quietly for a month or two? Suddenly, Yun-woo looked at Yun-chi with a light smile and asked. Yun-chi's eyes were full of laughter. This girl must want to go somewhere without being noticed. Was that a sign of trust in him? Give me a night, and I'll let Yun-woo recover, on bed in Ning Yard for 2 months. Yun-woo laughed. For the first time, she felt that it was not bad to have such a helper. Yun-chi won the championship, so the life flower and rewards were sent to Yun house. For Yun-woo, it was too easy to get all things in Yun family. She needed growing grass besides life flower. Long Qinxia told her that the growing grass was in the middle ridge of Evil Beast Forest at the intersection of the 3 kingdoms. She had checked continental map before and remembered the route. If the journey to Evil Beast Forest went smoothly, it would take at least a month or so to get back the growing grass. If she disappeared suddenly, it would inevitably arouse suspicion from the Empress and the Emperor. It was absolutely fool to put herself in the light. So she asked Yun-chi to help. After one night, when Yun-woo looked at a Yun-woo exactly like her, she suddenly understood why Yun-chi said that he needed a night. He must make some efforts and use some special means to make this Yun-woo. The next day. At daybreak, a small figure appeared quietly in the backyard of Yun house. Soon, the figure disappeared silently at the end of the street. Yun-woo rode a horse in men's clothes and went out of the city as soon as city door opened. This horse was quick as Yun-woo's wish. But Yun-woo neglected that although she had learned to ride a horse in her previous life, she never really had a long journey by riding a horse. An hour later, she felt a sharp ache on buttocks, so she had to stop by the roadside. Damn it, I should buy a carriage, Yun-woo rubbed her painful buttocks, frowning. In fact, she was rich enough to buy a flying beast since she had robbed the whole treasure house. But that was too high profile. She thought carriage was too slow. So she chose the beast horse. Beast horse was fast and low-key, but it really let her buttocks suffer. In the distance, there was a roar of beasts suddenly came with dust swirling in the air. Yun-woo looked up to the dim dust. 2 white unicorns pulling a luxury carriage came at a high speed and stopped in front of her in the twinkling of an eye. The dust blurred her eyes. At the same moment, her horse seemed to be shocked, roared, and ran away quickly. Oops. Bah. Yunwoo wanted to chase her horse, but as soon as she opened mouth, she inhaled a lot of dust. In the blink of an eye, the horse had disappeared. There was no way for Yunwoo to catch up with it. On the roadside, there was a luxurious carriage. The two white unicorns raised their heads proudly and snorted at Yunwoo disdainfully. It showed a strong sense of contempt. Yunwoo's mood suddenly became bad to the extreme. Yunwoo put on a long face, and walked up to the carriage on the roadside. "You're so angry, do you want to vent your anger to your husband?" As soon as Yunwoo approached the carriage, a charming lazy voice came from it with a deep laugh. Carriage doors carved with exquisite totems were slowly opened. Long Qinxia lay gracefully on the soft couch in the spacious carriage, his white clothes drifting made him look like an immortal, and his enchanting silver hair, together with his handsome and evil face, brought him a kind of suffocating charm. Yunwoo was stunned at that moment. After she recovered from her astonishment, a doubt appeared in the bottom of her eyes. No one knew except Yunqi that she would leave the capital city. Long Qinxia shouldn't be informed by Yunqi. Was he watching her all the time? "Little thing, you have my blood in your body. It's easy for me to sense your position." Seeing Yunwoo's doubts and cold eyes, Long Qinxia explained with an invisible laugh. "His blood? Was this the uniqueness of sacred blood?" Although Yunwoo was familiar with the general history of the mainland, which introduced many things on the mainland, a lot of things were not recorded in the book. So, at this time, it was a normal reaction to have a feeling of incredulity. "Get on." Inside the carriage, Long Qinxia waved his hand like summoning a puppy. However, on his evil face, he wore a charming smile that bewitched all living beings. The seduction of the smile let a person's heart beat faster. Yunwoo frowned and thought, was this damn evil man using his psychedelic trick again? "I have something important to do. I don't have time to play with you." Yunwoo turned around and was ready to leave. "Little thing, do you want me to hold you up? Come up." His light laughter was casual, but it had an undoubted hegemony and strength. Yunwoo stopped, frowning. A cold light flashed across her eyes. Did this man really see her as an assistant? She didn't want to respond to him. However, just when Yunwoo was about to leave, her waist was entangled by something suddenly. She had already been carried into the carriage and lay prone on Long Qingxia's chest before she knew it. "You." As Yunwoo opened her mouth, she was suddenly kissed by Long Qingxia on the red lips. Yunwoo struggled with her eyes wide open, but her head was firmly held by a big hand. She couldn't resist this fiery and domineering kiss. He tied her hands behind her back with one hand, which tore the wound on her body. His kiss was hegemonic and powerful. It shocked Yunwoo. Before Yunwoo felt dizzy and blank in her brain. She bit Long Qingxia firmly. The smell of blood soon spread in their mouths. At this time, their lips were separated. Long Qingxia wiped the blood on his lips with his hand, and then he stared at Yunwoo with his sexy eyes. "You're really like a wild kitten, so I must use such means to settle you down. You are shameless." Yunwoo glared at him, but in an instant, a touch of chagrin flashed across her eyes. Damn it! Why did she always get mad at this man and lose all her sense? His blood was not only holy blood, but also the strongest filter. In the eyes of men who laughed so enchantingly, Yunwoo lost her consciousness in that instant. It was dark. In the carriage. It was comfortable. Yunwoo stretched her body subconsciously when she woke up. The very relaxed comfort let her want to groan out loud. This feeling was like a sense of bizarre reincarnation. Immediately, an image flashed through her mind. She turned her head. Long Qinxia was still half lying on the soft couch on the other side of the carriage, holding his head with one hand and keeping his eyes closed. Beauty in couch? No, it should be a handsome man in couch. Very beautiful, very charming, very exciting. This man didn't need to use the psychedelic trick at all. He was the best filter himself. whether a woman or a man would be attracted by him just after having a look at him. To be honest, if it wasn't the unforgettable betrayal she suffered in her previous life, she could hardly control her heart and would fall in love with him easily. When Yunwoo was lost in thought, Long Qinxia's closed black eyes opened. His smiling eyes met Yunwoo's starry ones. "Am I handsome?" asked Long Qinxia unhurriedly. Yunwoo was stunned. She hid her inner feelings for a moment and rolled her eyes towards him. Instead of responding to him, she asked, "Where are we going?" The carriage ran smooth and steady, but she occasionally felt the bumps brought by the galloping unicorns. Northern Beast Forest. Hearing this, Yunwoo tilted her head and looked at Long Qinxia in surprise because that was the destination she was going to. "Nobody knows growing grass except me. If you go alone, I'm afraid you will exceed your timeline." Long Qinxia wore an evil smile. Yunwoo frowned. Indeed, she searched through all alien herbal books, there was no record of growing grass. Originally, she planned to go to Beast Forest and asked some local people about it. But he said only he knew growing grass. Was it a conspiracy? However, Yunwoo found that the wound on her body left by the fire wolves had disappeared. There was no scar at all. What was going on? Was it because of Long Qinxia's blood? Yunwoo couldn't help looking at Long Qinxia. Long Qinxia had sat up from the soft couch and looked at her with the evil smile. He hooked his finger at her and said, "Come here." Yunwoo's gratitude was replaced by depression at this moment. He really saw her as a puppy. Yunwoo glanced at him, "Talk directly. Don't." However, before she talked more, the man opposite rushed at her and lay idle on her like a boneless person. "Do you have a conscience? Your husband bled and consumed much energy for you. Why don't you be tender to me?" In the magnetic voice, there was a pitiful tone, which touched her earlobe gently. Yunwoo was stunned. To tell the truth, since she woke up in this strange world, Long Qinxia had done a lot for her, but he was really too annoying in behaviors and words. Even though she was grateful and wanted to be kind to him, she was annoyed by his behaviors and forgot to show her gratitude, like now. Lying prone on her wasn't something unbearable. But Long Qinxia rubbed her breasts with his hands, nestling his head against her neck, and seducing her by constantly blowing hot air around her neck and earlobe. Yunwoo felt a shy heat on face, turned angry from embarrassment and then pushed him hard away. But the man stuck to her again like gum. They repeated push and rush, so their gesture became more and more intimate, which also gave Long Qinxia more chances to have his hands all over Yunwoo. The temperature in the carriage soared in an instant. Suddenly, Yunwoo felt cool on the chest. Looking down, Yunwoo became furious finally. "Long Qinxia. Don't go too far." Long Qinxia was kicked away by Yunwoo. She was so angry that her chest heaved fiercely. She put on the clothes and immediately sat up from the soft couch. This guy was absolutely a pedophile. Long Qinxia's face was somewhat gloomy. There was a frightening cold glimmer in his deep eyes. He was unhappy being kicked away in the passion. However, such emotions were quickly concealed by him. Even he was kicked off the couch, Long Qinxia still looked elegant. He sat cross-legged in an idle way as if it was his natural temperament. He might be so graceful even when he killed people. Such a man, in fact, was the most terrible one. He would never let you see through him. Yunwoo took a deep breath and stared at the man who slowly arose. She calmly said, "Long Qinxia, as we go to Beast Forest together, I must make something clear." Long Qinxia raised the corners of the mouth, and restored his enchanting expression. "What's the matter? If you want to ask me not to touch you, then you don't have to say it. I'm your husband. For other things, it's up to me even you said yes or no. So what do you want to say?" Yunwoo was so depressed upon these words. What she wanted was rejected by him totally. What else could she say? Although he always helped her, he always made her depressed. Yunwoo was really angry and annoyed, but she could do nothing to him because she was too weak in strength to win Long Qinxie. But she won't allow it to last long. Someday, she would make him suffer. This annoying, powerful, but attractive guy. The white unicorns ran faster than her horse. They only used 5 days to reach the destination while Yunwu had estimated the journey would take more than 10 days. Northern Beast Forest located in the border area of the northwest of Zhou Dynasty. Its area was vast and unmeasurable, and no one really went to the deepest part of the forest to measure it. However, people could imagine the size of the forest, which ran through the intersection of the 3 countries. There were towering shrubs of thousands of years old, dense and complex. Evil beasts were rampant in it. Its danger was definitely far beyond a normal beast forest. Even a warrior would not walk alone in it unless he got the realm of a great warrior. So, almost all the people who went to Evil Beast Forest were in groups. Dragon Town was the entrance to the northern Evil Beast Forest, the only town within 500-meter radius. Generally, people who planned to enter the forest would take a night rest in this town to get some supplies ready. At the same time, some people who came alone from other places could also find some partners or groups in town. For a long time, though Dragon Town was a remote town, it was still a busy place for people to come and go. Is this hotel yours? In a luxury booth, Yunwu glanced at Long Qinxie, who was gracefully picking vegetables with chopsticks. As soon as they stopped at the inn gate, the manager greeted them respectfully in person. Not only were 2 best rooms prepared for them, but also the dining booth was the most luxurious one. Although, from the beginning to the end, the manager did not call Long Qinxie, Yunwu got something from his attitude. Long Qinxie put a hunk of meat into the bowl of Yunwu and smiled, "If you want it, even if it is not mine, I will make it mine." What was the meaning of this answer? Yunwu wanted to roll her eyes. But these 5 days' company really made Yunwu fully know his character. The best way to deal with this cheeky man was to ignore him directly. Otherwise, too many questions would lead to too many mistakes, and she would be easily annoyed by his words. In the end, she would be mad at herself. At this moment, there was a hubbub outside. A loud, gruff, angry voice rose. Yunwu looked down from the window. An argument was putting up in the street full of vendors and pedestrians. A strong man with a beard was pulling an old woman's collar in a vicious manner and lifting her up. Many people gathered around after hearing the strong man's loud voice. "Hand it to me at once, or I will tear you apart," the strong man with a dark face threatened the old woman with his big fist. The old woman was trembling, her eyes were full of fear. "Please be reasonable, sir. I have given you everything you want. What else do you want? Quit pretending. If you don't hand it to me right now, don't blame me for being rude." With a firm grip of the fist, his bones rattled. At this moment, a dirty little girl rushed over with tears. "Jerk, let go of my mother, let go of my mother." The strong man was impatient, so he lifted his foot and kicked the little girl away. "Get away. If you provoke me, I will also beat you." The old woman cried and prayed for help from all around her. "Help my poor girl, help me." Nevertheless, the cry for help had not yet fallen. The strong man with a sullen look slapped the old woman's face hard with a loud thwack. "Do you think that they will save you? If you shout again, I will cut your tongue." With that, the strong man slapped the old woman fiercely again, which made her mouth bleed and her face swollen like steamed bread. She looked so pathetic. This finally led to the sympathy and discontent of all the people around. "Little brother, you are too cruel to the poor girl and her mother. Show mercy. Don't go too far." Sitting on the 2nd floor, Yunwu looked at the scene without more expressions. Her eyes were still cold as frost, quiet as dead water. Long Qinxie glanced at the scene and then fixed his eyes on Yunwu. He smiled at her indifferent expression and said, "Don't you think that mother and daughter below are worthy of sympathy? If you feel they are poor, you can go out and help them." "Why do you ask me?" Yunwu replied indifferently. "Please make your husband know your thought clearly." Long Qinxie gazed at her with a smile. Yunwoo rolled her eyes. A dwarf, a cheater. What else should I say? Dwarf? Long Qinxie did not understand this word. Nevertheless, her neat remark revealed the reality of the scene, and a touch of admiration crossed Long's eyes. You little thing, have you really been in the back hill of Yun family for 15 years? All her actions and words were quite different from what he had investigated. If he hadn't personally confirmed she was the 9th lady of Yun family, he would doubt if she was real Yunwoo of Yun family. Yunwoo didn't want to make more remarks. Long Qinxie must have investigated her according to his words. Suddenly, there was a voice of tenderness outside. How dare you bully the weak in public in daylight? Let her go at once. Otherwise, I won't be kind to you. As the delicate voice fell, the slender figure of a woman holding a long sword leaped into the air. The woman was about 17 or 18 years old, dressed in yellow, which seemed to be the uniform of some college. At this moment, her beautiful little face was full of anger. She stared at the bearded man with her beautiful cold eyes. Behind her, a short distance away, a group of teenage boys and girls were walking towards her. There were 5 of them, all of whom were dressed in the same outfits as hers. And a middle-aged man in gray mentor uniform was walking beside them. It seemed that a mentor of the academy was taking trainees out on a field trip. However, Yunwoo gave an obvious frown on sight of that female. Li Xner. She used to hang out in General Mansion and seemed to enjoy being Yun Lingshue's lackey. In her memory, Li Xner had offered Yun Lingshue a lot of prankish ideas to play tricks on her. On the worst occasion, they hung her by her feet from a branch and whipped her till she was covered in cuts and bruises. Then they left her hanging there for a whole day and a night, which nearly killed her. Afterwards, it was said that she got a place in Warrior Academy. Unexpectedly, after more than a year, the two foes ran into each other at such an out-of-the-way place. Watching Li Xner down there, the corner of Yunwoo's compressed lips suddenly curved up slightly. Hearing that reprimand in a female voice, the strong man frowned and turned his head. Little girl, go away and do what you gotta do. Stay out of my business, or you'll get yourself into trouble. Hem. This business of yours has just become my business. After a cold snort, Li Xner swung her sword at him with a flash of cold light. Her attacks were fast and steady, fighting spirit engulfing the blade, and a scorching hotness started pervading. Yellow tier talent, tier 2 early stage, fire. The impatience on the strong man's face was instantly replaced by grave ferocity as soon as he saw this scene. When that sword slash was coming for him, he immediately loosened his grip on the old woman and whipped out the broad saber fastened to his waist, orange fighting spirit billowing out from his body along with tier 2 peak fighting force. Two figures intertwined with each other instantly. Yet the gap between the strength of the two sides was very obvious. After a few moves, Li Xner was clearly reduced to a passive position. Let us help, junior sister. With a yell in a haughty tone, the 5 teenagers joined the fight forthwith. In the blink of an eye, the situation became 6 versus 1. That mentor just stood at the side with his arms crossed before his chest, arrogantly watching this fighting scene. The look on his face seemed to be suggesting that not only were they upholding justice but also this fight was helpful in toughening his students. All of a sudden, someone with sharp eyes saw the logos on their outfits and cried in surprise. My God, they're from the Mighty King Warrior Academy. What? Mighty King Warrior Academy? Immediately, the eyes of all the people around swept towards the students with an intent look. Very soon, a ghost of astonishment and excitement flashed in their eyes. The Mighty King Warrior Academy was the best academy in Zhou dynasty and it was said the entrance requirement was very strict. Applicants whose talent failed to meet the criteria would never be admitted even if they were members of royal family. As a result, whoever got admitted into Mighty King Academy was undoubtedly top applicants with exceptional talent. No wonder that tough hombre looked so violent and wicked, yet this little girl still dared to mess with him. It turned out that she was from the Mighty King Warrior Academy. Terrific. Nice move. She's definitely from the Mighty King Warrior Academy. That girl's not only beautiful but also so powerful. At this moment, loud cheers arose among the crowd along with animated compliments and admiration, surrounding Lee Xiner and the other 5 teenagers. Hearing the compliments, Lee Xiner was somewhat self-satisfied and her moves became more aggressive. Although that strong man was in peak stage of Tier 2, his 6 opponents were all above Tier 2, and one of them was even in late stage of Tier 2. Their moves were ruthless and their teamwork was very good. After fighting for such a long time, a number of cuts appeared on him. Abruptly, the 6 opponents launched their attacks on him from his front, back, left and right sides simultaneously, every saber aiming at his vital parts. The strong man's facial expression changed. He took a transverse slash and tapped on the ground with his foot, planning to leap upwards and flee. But at this moment, a cold look appeared in the eyes of the middle-aged mentor at the side. Villain. Where do you think you're going? With a quick swing of his hand, earth energy surged out, and a spurt of weighty earth force emerged in the air, pressing straight downwards onto the head of the strong man. Air! The strong man couldn't help giving a muffled groan, the force weighing him down like the full weight of the Tai Mountain. The look on his face changed drastically. With a downward movement of his body, his feet violently sank deep into the ground. The momentum of that great force diffused outwards and all the people around felt a tide of compressive force coming right towards their front. Gasps and yells were heard. A Tier 7 Earth Master. His fighting forces so formidable. His earth-controlling capabilities amazing. When people around were still screaming in shock, Lee Xiner seized this opportunity, a killing intent flickering across her eyes. With a feet movement, she stabbed her sword towards that strong man's heart ruthlessly. Die! Villain! But all of a sudden, a cold light shot at her face head-on. It was so fast, leaving her no time to react. Fortunately, that mentor had both sharp eyes and quick reflexes, drawing Lee Xiner backwards with great suction. Who is it? You dared to stab us in the back. The mentor's face became sullen, his sharp eyes sweeping around. It was at this time that the people around reacted. They saw a small knife sticking in the ground, giving off eerie, cold reflection of light. If it weren't for that the mentor's movement was quicker, that knife would have taken Lee Xiner's life. Yet, his angry yell received no response. In a box on the 2nd floor. You little thing. Aren't you not interested? With an enchanting smile, Long Qingxie stared at Yunwu. Do you think I'm interested now? Yunwu arched her eyebrows and asked rhetorically. After that, Yunwu continued to enjoy the meal as if nothing had ever happened. However, in this man's eyes, things had just got more interesting. Of course, it was not Long Qingxie who had shot that knife. To him, except for this woman before him, nobody else was worthy of him taking any action. Yet this woman's sudden behavior had somewhat surprised him. Judging by her personality, she didn't seem like the kind of person who would show anyone excessive sympathy. Unless, one of those people below once messed with her. Long Qingxie reached out his hand, scratched the bridge of her nose and pinched her delicate cheek, so naughty. Yunwu slapped his hand away and gave a reproachful look at him. You know, as a man, you can just talk if you want to talk, so stop touching me so frequently. I'm not a cloth puppet. Hearing her words, Long Qingxie gave a languid evil smile. Okay, then. From now on, instead of using my hands, I'll use my mouth. On hearing this, Yunwu was embarrassed, a timid, annoyed glint flashed across Yunwu's eyes. Shameless. Thanks. Long Qingxie grinned, enjoying that word very much. This bitch. Yunwu really wanted to hurl abuse at him. Actually, she had done that before. However, the outcome was just like what had just happened before her. To him, it seemed as if all abuse was compliments. The more angrily she swore at him, the more he enjoyed it. And eventually, it was herself that suffered from the anger. Actually, Yunwu believed he did this deliberately, absolutely deliberately. So, Most of the time, she tolerated it whenever she could, because she didn't want to content him. What she didn't know was that what satisfied this man the most was exactly the fact that she was plainly full of anger yet still had to try her best to swallow it down. However, at the time when these two people were flirting outside the window, that mentor had focused his aggressive eyes on their position. "Junior, get down here right now and explain yourselves." The angry cry had just died away when a surge of earth force fiercely charging at the window of the wing room on the second floor. Thud. With a loud thump, the window was shattered to pieces. All the spectators below raised their heads and looked upwards. When they saw the two men in the wing room, especially when they saw the one with silver hair, all people couldn't help but gasp secretly. A gleam of astonishment crossed their eyes. Even men found that bewitching beauty irresistible and couldn't help praising it privately. But that mentor's face became leaden, vigilance arising in him. Others might not know it, but he knew very clearly that the earth force he had exerted was cancelled out by some mysterious force after breaking that window. He was in late stage of Tier 7. Yet his power was cancelled out quietly. There was only one plausible explanation for this, but how was this possible? One of them was seemingly in his early 20s, and the other was just a teenager. How was it possible that any of them was more powerful than him? Right at this moment when suspicion and confusion were full of his mind. Beside him, a tender and charming voice was heard. "Child, we're trainees of Mighty King Warrior Academy, and this is the mentor of our class. May I ask why you helped that villain just now?" Li Xaner raised her head and stared directly at Long Qingxie. Judging by that bashfulness on her face, even blind people would know clearly what she was thinking of. Yunwu raised her eyebrows and glanced at Long Qingxie out of the corner of her eye. It seems that this devil's magnetism is really enormous. His face alone can fascinate whoever sees it. However, under Li Xaner's gaze which was full of bashfulness. "That devil said, Tiny, you were right. This Mighty King Warrior Academy indeed enrolled a bunch of blind and stupid students." Saying this, he reached out his hand and stroked Yunwu's head. With a grave look on his face which was suggesting she was right. Yunwu was stunned. What had she been right about? What had she said? But after a second, Yunwu, who finally understood, clenched her teeth in anger. This damn man dared to frame her right under her nose. After the man said that, not only did the look on Li Xaner's face freeze, but also the other 5 teenage boys and girls were astounded, annoyance surging through them. "What did you say, pal?" Not to mention that mentor's face, it instantly became black with rage. With a grip of his fists, furious power gushed out momentarily. "As a junior, you are way too arrogant." "Arrogant? But I think what she said is right," Long Qingxie added casually and languidly. Finally, all the fury was ignited instantly. But at this moment, a chopstick shot across the air. Under everybody's eyes, that little thin chopstick went straight into the shank of the old woman who was trying to escape stealthily. Ouch! A painful screech was heard. "Leave my stuff before you leave," a cold voice casually came from the second floor. Seeing this scene, everybody felt a chill in their heart. No fighting spirit, and no manipulation of element energy. Yet the chopstick had accurately gone through that old woman's shank after traveling such a long distance. What kind of power was that? When everybody raised their head in amazement and looked at Yunwu who was in men's clothing. That little girl below recoiled and hurriedly tried to nudge her way into the crowd. But the next moment, that strong man blocked her path. "Still want to leave?" The strong man's face was full of sullenness and anger. He reached out his hand, grabbed her and lifted that small figure up. "Let go of me, you villain. Let me go." A childish voice said. "You scoundrel still dared to do evil." Li Xaner reprimanded. No matter what, if she still wanted to give that silver-haired man a good impression, continuing to curb the violent and assist the weak was definitely her best choice. With her beauty and deeds, she believed that he would surely be attracted to her. However, right at the time when Li Xian'er was indulging herself with her rosy fantasies, the strong man went angry. He stretched out his strong palm and rubbed it against the dirty face of that little girl. When that thick layer of filth was removed, an old, ugly face full of wrinkles emerged before the crowd. Everybody, watch closely. The two are utter frauds. Hearing this yell, all people present were stunned, including Li Xian'er, who had been meaning to act like a hero and uphold the justice. To get a ripe fire focus fruit, I risked life and limb staying in the magic beast's forest for half a year, and nearly got killed by a magic beast. My wife is ill and she needs this fruit. But these two despicable frauds told me that they were pharmacists. They not only tricked me out of my life savings but also stole my fire focus fruit and ran away. I tracked them for a whole month and today I finally got them. Saying this, the strong man indignantly turned his head back, looking at Li Xian'er, who was standing transfixed, as well as those trainees and their mentor. But you people of Mighty King Warrior Academy, you attacked me without knowing anything about the truth, and you even tried to kill me with all your deadly blows. Is this how you Mighty King Warrior Academy guys do things? You gave me chills in the heart. Originally, they had thought that they were upholding the justice and helping the weak, yet at this moment, they instantly became an extremely ridiculous laughingstock. Li Xian'er clenched her fists and anxiously said without thinking, "Look at yourself, so ugly and villain-like. Whoever sees you will think that you're not a good people. So who can you blame for your being misunderstood?" Yet her remarks displayed the lowest stupidity. So you're saying that you judge people only on their looks? Haha. Everybody keeps saying that all students of Mighty King Warrior Academy are talents of genius, but today I really broadened my horizons. These so-called talents are nothing but a bunch of fools who judge people by their appearance. The strong man burst into laugh, his angry words harboring endless sneer. However, at this moment, all the others fell into silence. The nobility and superiority of the Mighty King Warrior Academy was beyond words. Yet this luxuriantly bearded man dared to make a statement like this. Was he not afraid of retaliation? However, hearing these words, that mentor became speechless. If the mentor's face was originally black, then it turned livid at this instant. He slid a reproachful sideways glance at Li Xian'er, the look in his eyes full of irritation indicating that she never made but always broke. On an eye contact with the mentor, Li Xian'er gave a shiver. She suddenly realized the stupidity of her previous words, but she still believed that this was not all her fault. Why she had to take all the blame? Fairly annoyed, she raised her head and glared at Yunwu, who was on the second floor. A cold glint flickered across her pretty eyes. All this was on him. If it weren't for him being an interfering busybody, how could things end up like this? She didn't care about whether they were frauds or not. She launched attack only to give the mentor a favorable impression. But she had never expected that what she did would make a shameful laughingstock of Mighty King Warrior Academy. Damn! That goddamn kid! He's not getting away with this. As regards the other 5 trainees, the looks on their faces also instantly became quite a show. Liars? That old woman and the kid were liars. Even if they didn't want to admit, the fact was right before them. At this moment, all their previous pride and vanity turned into ridicule and shame. Especially when everybody was looking at them, their faces couldn't look worse. As for what happened next, Yunwu had lost interest in it. Under everybody's gaze, she stood up and returned to her room. In regard Long Qingxie, that devil was naturally like a copycat. After following her into her room, he took liberties with her, which of course irritated Yunwu, and then he leisurely and languidly went back to his own room. This inn was very quiet. For the whole night, nobody disturbed them. Yunwu was fairly confused. Because to her knowledge of Li Xian'er, she believed that what she had done previously would undoubtedly annoy Li Xian'er, so Li Xian'er would sneak in and do something at midnight. Yet she waited all night but didn't see anybody. The next morning, When Yunwu and Long Qingxie walked out of the inn and was about to depart for the magic beast's forest. It was so coincidental. A slim and delicate figure accidentally ran into them and fell straight towards Long Qingxie. Ouch! A female yell was heard. The corner of Long Qingxie's mouth slightly curved up, yet a cold gleam flashed across his eyes. He took a step back, moving sideways. Li Xian'er's falling figure missed him and her mouth went straight towards the ground. Right at the moment when Li Xian'er's facial expression slightly changed, a figure rapidly rushed over and supported her. "Are you okay, junior sister?" It was the only one among the 5 trainees who was in late stage of Tier 2, Gu Qin. He was about 18 or 19 years old and his look was all right, yet not exactly handsome. About 5. 4 feet in height, he was wearing a yellow outfit, which made him look a little dumpy. Standing side by side with Li Xian'er, he didn't seem to be as tall as she was. Judging from the concerned look in his eyes, he clearly had a crush on Li Xian'er. Unfortunately, Li Xian'er's eyes were squarely fixed on Long Qingxie like a piece of fly sticker sticking to him. She didn't reply to Gu Qin. Li Xian'er bashfully looked at Long Qingxie and said, "I'm sorry, child. Did I hurt you just now? I'm a trainee from Mighty King Warrior Academy, Li Xian'er." So saccharine, so gross, excessively feminine voice. She didn't know how that devil felt, but Yunwu was covered in goosebumps. No wonder Li Xian'er didn't come to seek revenge last night. It turned out that the reason was this goddamn devil. Women equal trouble, the saying was correct. Although there was a smile on the corner of Long Qingxie's mouth, he glanced at her blandly. "Oh. You're one of the blind and stupid trainees we met yesterday. Since you're blind, I certainly won't blame you." Hearing his remarks, Li Xian'er's smile instantly froze, an awkward glint flashing across her eyes. Supporting Li Xian'er, Gu Qin's face clouded after hearing these words. "Don't go too far, child. What happened yesterday was a misunderstanding. You don't have to keep bringing it up and insulting us. You. Senior brother." Li Xian'er pulled Gu Qin and told him to stop talking. Gu Qin was very unhappy, but under Li Xian'er's gaze, he swallowed it. A delicate smile reappeared on the beautiful face of Li Xian'er. "I can see that you're going to Magic Beast's forest. It happens that we're going there to improve our skills as well. Can we go with you? If we go together, we can take care of each other." So, this was the reason why they had shown up at the gate of this inn, waiting for them so early. The 6 of them had come here together, which indicated that the one who wanted to invite them to travel together was their mentor. It must be that that mystical force and Yunwu's move yesterday had aroused that mentor's suspicion. Possibly he wanted to travel together with them because he intended to sound them out. Yet Long Qingxie didn't reject immediately. He stretched out his long arm and put it on Yunwu's shoulder, his big body languidly leaning against her. After enchantingly and intimately blowing into Yunwu's ear, Long Qingxie said sentimentally, "You decide, Tiny. You know, I'll do whatever you say." Seeing the intimacies between the 2 men, people around started giving them weird gaze. Including several trainees behind Li Xian'er. With a frown on her face, Li Xian'er clenched her fists secretly. Yet this pal again. She had never failed to get the man she wanted. It was just that she hadn't expected that the rival she was going to vie with was a man. The anger in her heart was quickly replaced by a killing intent. Very good. As for that kid, she had always felt that he was an eyesore from the beginning, and yesterday he made an utter fool of her. If it weren't for the handsome silver-haired man beside him, she would have made her move last night. It seemed that she would have to make sure he never came back after they arrived in the Magic Beast's forest. Li Xian'er concealed her psychological changes very well, if not perfectly. However, what she didn't know was that this was exactly what Yunwu wanted. She once said that she wouldn't let a single one of those who had bullied her get away. This little town was so remote, yet they still encountered her. So, Yunwu would surely take her life. "Would you mind my coming along with you, young friends?" At this time, that mentor walked towards them from a small alley, with a look just as condescending and grave as yesterday. Teacher Wu. Li Xian'er and the other 5 trainees respectfully greeted him. Wu Qin nodded, gazing at Yun Wu with piercing eyes. It seemed that he had heard their previous conversation. Or, maybe he had been deliberately hiding and observing them from the beginning. Looking Wu Qin in the eyes, the corner of Yun Wu's lips slowly curved up. It's our honor to have a master as powerful as Teacher Wu to be our companion. Apologies for the trouble we may cause you, Teacher Wu. Wu Qin enjoyed these words very much. As a mentor of the mighty King Warrior Academy, people always looked up to and flattered him wherever he went. He could even do almost whatever he wanted to do in Zhou Dynasty. As for these 2 juniors, he deigned to travel together with them merely because of that mystical force which appeared yesterday. Whichever of these 2 that power had come from, he would consider enrolling him on behalf of the academy if he indeed was highly talented. This was literally a gift for anybody. However, it was on the day when he saw the 2 figures dwarfing all people that he realized how ridiculous this idea of a gift had been. The magic beast's forest was mighty and vast, with numerous rolling mountains. Apart from various rare birds and unique beasts, there were also countless precious medicinal herbs in it. Generally speaking, the magic beasts that lived on the periphery of the forest were usually low-level ones. The deeper into the forest the area was, the higher the level of the magic beasts were, and the more powerful they were. Those who came in large groups or small teams, even mercenaries, rarely ventured into the depths of the forest. After hundreds of thousands of years' accumulation, the deeper the area, the rarer and more abundant the precious medicinal herbs. Ever since they entered the magic beast's forest, Wu Qin had been guiding them wandering on the periphery. When they ran into magic beasts, he'd always ask Li Xian'er and the other 5 trainees to kill them. Yun Wu and Long Qingxie just followed behind them, idly watching as if they were enjoying the performances of a circus. After that fierce fight, ahead was over. Li Xian'er neatly took out a dagger, cut open the head of the magic beast and extracted a gray walnut-like magic core. Mr. Wu, this is the last Tier 1 peak stage magic core we need. The mission is accomplished. Grabbing the magic core covered in brains, Li Xian'er proudly raised her hand and yelled happily in Wu Qin's direction. Yet her eyes were focusing on Long Qingxie who was behind Wu Qin. It seemed as though she wanted to find a ghost of special feeling for her in his eyes. It was a pity that his eyes had been on the boy beside him all along. He didn't even glance at her out of the corner of his eye. She couldn't help getting annoyed. A faint smile finally appeared on Wu Qin's face when he saw this. Not bad. Come here, all of you. It had only been a day and a night. Yet they had managed to collect 5 Tier 1 intermediate stage magic cores, 2 Tier 1 advanced stage magic cores and a Tier 1 peak stage magic core. This speed was very quick. The time they had used was far less than what Wu Qin had expected, an element of gratification tinged with haughtiness arising in him. Hearing Wu Qin's call, Li Xian'er and the others hurriedly came over from beside the body of that magic beast. What's our next assignment, Mr. Wu? Wu Qin was very happy to see that his students were so motivated. Yet at this time, Wu Qin turned his head back and looked at Yun Wu and Long Qingxie who had been following them for a whole day yet hadn't made any moves. Young friends, would you please join us and give us a hand from time to time? Long Qingxie languidly leaned against a tree beside him and said idly, I only answer to my tiny. If she says yes, I'll have some fun with you. With a single remark, he put Yun Wu in the limelight again. With a sepulchral look in her eyes, Li Xian'er secretly clenched her fists. Wu Qin's glance rested on Yun Wu again, then, what do you say, young friend? Unexpectedly, with her lips curving in a smile, Yun Wu agreed exceptionally crisply, okay. But, I want to team up with Ms. Li in a broad mauve men's robe. Not only didn't her slim figure seem delicate, but also the robe imparted an elegant, ethereal temperament to her. Without the apathy in her eyes, she would be a standard adorable little boy. Hearing Yun Wu's remarks, Li Xian'er was amazed. Teaming up with her? She had expected that she could partner the handsome silver-haired man, but to her surprise that boy wanted to team up with her. Did he have a crush on her? Does he actually think that he's worthy of me? But, this sounded fine, because she was in fact worried that she might not be able to find an opportunity to strike. They separated into 2 teams with 4 members each to gather the medicinal materials on a list. Yunwoo, Lee Xiner, Gu Qin and another female trainee named Xine composed a team. Yet Long Qingxie were assigned to the other team along with the other 3 trainees. This, needless to say, was Wu Qin's deliberate arrangements. In order to find out who released that mystical force that day, the only way, naturally, was to divide them from each other. Be careful, Tiny. Long Qingxie stroked her head like a doting parent, but the next moment, in a muted voice that could only be heard by themselves, he said, "Don't be too soft and don't leave any survivors. When the job's done, I'll come and find you." The white clothing gave him an ethereal, otherworldly air as if he was a white lotus growing in earthliness, yet deep down in his enchanting eyes, there was a flicker of bloodiness. If people stayed with this man long enough, they would find that beneath his sweet appearance there was a bloodthirsty, deceitful soul. What are you waiting for? Move! Before Yunwoo could respond to Long Qingxie's husband and wife concern for her, Li Xianer's sullen, angry rebuke was heard. Women's jealousy was actually horrible. Once they were determined to do something or own something, they would rack their brains and do whatever they could to get what they wanted. Originally, according to Wu Qin's instructions, they were supposed to gather medicinal materials within an area of about 100 meters into the forest. But as the team leader, Li Xianer deliberately kept leading them deeper into the forest. Before they knew it, they reached the depths of the peripheral mountains, exuberant towering trees darkening the whole area. Dimly, they seemed to have sensed a tinge of danger lurking somewhere around them. Roar! Suddenly, deafening roars of magic beasts rumbled over from the depths of the forest. The momentum of the sound was definitely not something that the sound of those low-level magic beasts on the periphery could compare with. Instantly, Gu Qin and Xine stopped, their eyes sweeping around vigilantly and nervously. "Junior sister, we've reached the boundary of mountains. If we keep going, I'm afraid we'll be entering dangerous area," Gu Qin said with a frown on his face. Xine also nodded, "Yes. Mr. Wu said that we should gather medicinal materials within a range of 100 meters, but now we don't even know how far we have walked. What are you nervous about? This distance is perfect. Even a scream won't be heard by Mr. Wu." Li Xiner stopped and said inexplicably, the corner of her lips curved up. Gu Qin and Xine was stunned. What does she mean? At this time, with a cold flash of ruthlessness in her eyes, Li Xiner whipped out her sword and pointed at Yunwoo. I've been sick of you for a long time." Yunwoo watched Li Xiner, who was pointing a sword at her, a ghost of sepulchral smile flashing across her pretty face. Seeming as if she had seen through Li Xiner's thoughts a long time ago, Yunwoo was exceptionally composed at this moment. Exchanging an eye contact, Gu Qin and Xine were startled by Li Xiner and they didn't try to think why Li Xiner wanted to do this. Gu Qin walked over, reached out his hand and pulled that of Li Xiner's before asking with a frown, "Junior sister, what are you doing?" Don't you think this guy's disgusting, senior brother?" Finally a fearsome expression came over on Li Xiner's face. Now that they had gone this far, there was no need for Li Xiner to conceal her true intention of killing Yunwoo. Among the 3 trainees, Xine was the relatively timid one. Hearing Li Xiner's remarks, her heart missed a beat and she hurriedly waved her arms, saying, "Come on. Put your sword away, Li Xiner. If Mr. Wu knows this, he's definitely gonna punish you. I must kill him today." Li Xiner raised her voice, a cold murderous look flickering in Li Xiner's eyes. By the light, the blade of the sword reflected its shiny sharpness. She had been waiting for so long, so how could she possibly let go of this opportunity? Gu Qin and Xine were scared by Li Xiner's posture, but they also knew her very well. They turned their heads and looked at Yunwoo. What happened the day before yesterday flashed through their minds. They had never endured that kind of humiliation and shame before, and technically, this guy in front of them was the very reason why they had had to go through all that. And now here was a very good opportunity. If they didn't kill him now, they might never get another chance again. Killing intent flickered in their eyes. Both the two pulled out their swords and formed a row opposite Yunwoo. Lee Xaner was very satisfied with their joining in, and she gave a few cold laughs. You know what you did wrong, pal? With a languid look on her face, Yunwoo let out a hoa sound in a low voice and asked rhetorically, what did I do wrong? I'm actually curious about it. What you did wrong is that you shouldn't have been an interfering busybody that day, replied Gu Qin impatiently. Yet Lee Xaner said, do you actually think that you deserve that handsome man? And you even dared to require teaming up with me. You should have pissed onto the ground and looked into the urine to see how disgusting you are. It's been more than a year, Lee Xaner. I didn't expect that you're still so narcissistic. The corner of Yunwoo's lips curved into a perfect curve, and the next second, with a flip of her hand followed by a flash of cold light, a sword mounted with rubies was produced. The three was amazed. Since when had she been carrying a sword? It had been a year. Did she meet her a year ago? Lee Xaner started recollecting. Yunwoo gave a gentle twist to the sword in her hand and then sank it heavily into the ground, a surge of intangible killing aura storming towards the three. Nobody knew whether she did it intentionally or unintentionally. Her tightly tied hair suddenly loosened and the raven hair stuck to her face in gusts of icy wind, covering her exquisite white face with a layer of chilly murderousness. She had always had her own principles: repay every favor, and settle every score. Lee Xaner must pay for whatever she had done to her. Now that the three of them wanted her dead, then it was not necessary for themselves to live any longer. Certainly, before that, she would tell Lee Xaner the true meaning of the word disgusting. Black hair covering half of her face, she narrowed her cold eyes as if she were a vengeful ghost coming from the hell to collect lives. Suddenly, the faint image of a sick-looking face flashed across Lee Xaner's mind. Lee Xaner's heart missed a beat. With a shiver of her hand, she subconsciously called, Yunwoo. No, impossible. She couldn't be Yunwoo. Yunwoo's a sick good-for-nothing. How could she possibly be here? Besides, this was Northern Magic Beast's forest. How came? With various how come, Lee Xaner denied the suspicions in her mind. No, impossible. Yunwoo's a woman. She is merely. However, a breeze went by and blew aside the hair covering Yunwoo's face, which was like white jade and bearing a cold-blooded smile. In Lee Xaner's mind, a scene abruptly passed through. Back when they were still in the Yu mansion, she whipped Yunwoo till she was covered in bruises and cuts before hanging her by her feet from a tree. At that time Yunwoo was dying. Her body was dangling to and fro with neither any vigor on her face nor any strength to struggle. At this instant, that image of Yunwoo in Lee Xaner's mind overlapped with this Yunwoo before her. Yunwoo. Lee Xaner's heart missed a beat. Widening her eyes, she stared squarely at Yunwoo, unable to believe what she was seeing. Very good. It seems that there's no need for me to bother explaining to you who I am before you die. The corner of Yunwoo's mouth curved up, her hands overlapping on the sword hilt. Her legs moved slightly away from each other and then she tapped her forefinger at the back of the other hand. Her voice was very gentle, yet people hearing it found it eerie. Lee Xaner, even if you don't want to kill me today, I'm afraid you're still not going to make it out of this magic beast's forest. Yunwoo. Who is it? Gu Qin turned his head and asked Lee Xaner. Lee Xaner was terrified by Yunwoo's posture and started moving backwards, having no time to answer Gu Qin. Watching Yunwoo in front of her, Xine felt a great sense of crisis, as if they were about to die in a short while. This uncanny feeling gave her lurches in the heart. Face darkening, Xine took a step forward and yelled, "Senior brother, Lee Xaner, stop wasting time talking to her. Let's join hands and kill her. Hearing this, Li Xaner and Gu Qin gave their swords a twist with a murderous gleam in their eyes, fighting spirit surging out with a cold gleam. Three figures charged at Yun Wu with tacit teamwork and intense killing aura. Cold eyes fixed on the three people closing in on her, Yun Wu whipped out the sword in the ground and started advancing instead of backing. Seeing that she was coming for them head-on instead of evading, Li Xaner, Gu Qin and Xine sneered. All of them were masters of swordsmanship in the academy, and it would be a piece of cake for them to kill her in a 3-versus-1 fight. Their killing intent was very intense, yet in the next second, the sneering killing intent was replaced by amazement instantly. We missed. How was it possible? However, right under their amazed gaze, a flash of cold light shot at them from their sides. Ah! With a painful scream, Xine heavily fell to the ground, and her sword stuck into a big tree behind her. Xine. Are you okay? Gu Qin and Li Xaner looked at Xine. Ashen-faced, Xine turned her head, gave a glance and then widened her eyes so drastically that it seemed as if her kenti were about to crack. She cried painfully, "My arm." There was a deep cut in her right arm and the arm was nearly cut off, blood gushing out from the wound. I didn't cut it off. It seems that this sword's not sharp enough. Watching the blood-stained sword in her hand, Yun Wu mumbled in undertones with a frown. Hearing this, Xine's pupils contracted and then she swelled with rage. Without her right arm, her prospects were doomed even if she was a genius, but Yun Wu had put it as if she found the kitchen knife was not sharp enough when she was cutting vegetables. I'll kill you. Xine furiously picked herself up, grabbed the sword behind her and stabbed it squarely towards Yun Wu. Yun Wu's lips curved into a sanguinary smile. Seeing it, Gu Qin and Li Xaner tried to stop her. Xine clang, a sound of the sword clashing the ground was heard. Xine stood still behind Yun Wu. All of a sudden. Thud. Xine started falling straight backwards. There was a cut on her white neck, blood flowing out. Her eyes were dilated with fear and incredibility. Her speed was eerily fast. Yun Wu took out a piece of white silk from somewhere and started wiping the bloody blade elegantly. All those who wanted to kill me are in the underworld now. What a stupid woman. Yun Wu coldly said in a low mumble. Yet it was loud enough to be heard clearly by both Li Xaner and Gu Qin. You killed a trainee of Mighty King Warrior Academy. Li Xaner glowered. Xine was in middle stage of Tier 2, that was one level higher than her. Yet she just got killed like this. How did this happen? Isn't she a lame duck? So what? Yun Wu lifted her cold eyes and darted a glance at her. Just because you're from that warrior academy, I have to stand still and let you kill me. That was true. In a life-or-death moment, nobody cared who the enemies were or what background they were from. Anyone would just fight back. But she obviously had done it on purpose. However, at this moment, both Gu Qin and Li Xaner knew clearly that although this Yun Wu hadn't used warrior power, she had managed to break through the defense of someone in middle stage of Tier 2, and her bodily movements were uncannily fast, just like that of an assassin. Was she by any chance an assassin? If she was, then being in this dense forest would be the biggest disadvantage of them. We should retreat and find our teacher first. Then we come back and take her life. Yun Wu, that's your name, right? You killed a member of our academy. You've made an enemy of the whole Mighty King Warrior Academy. Let's go, junior sister, Gu Qin gave a bluff before leaving. Unfortunately, they had hardly walked 2 steps forward when a sword whooshed towards them. Li Xaner and Gu Qin hurriedly somersaulted. The sword inlaid with rubies deeply stuck into the ground before them. You want to leave? Do you really think that's going to happen? An extremely cold voice came from behind them. Gu Qin and Li Xaner turned around. Don't go too far, Yun Wu. Or we're really going to be hard on you, Li Xaner reprimanded angrily. Yet Yunwoo's eyes were exceptionally cold. Do you think you've been kind to me from the beginning? Watching her frosty black eyes, the two were startled secretly. But it's fine if you want to leave. As long as you leave your lives here. Yunwoo's lips curved into a cold smile. How the hell can we leave without our lives? Immediately, their sense of pride in their great talent was provoked. You really know how to bluff. Then I'd like to see how you can have us leave our lives here. Gu Qin's face darkened completely, Tier 2 late-stage fighting force soaring up all out. Fighting spirit engulfed his sword with a gleam. In a blink, Gu Qin dashed towards Yunwoo at lightning speed. She was an assassin without a sword. He'd like to see what else she could do. Watching Gu Qin dashing at her, Yunwoo gave a bloodthirsty smile. Having no sword. For a killer, as long as they still had their hands, they could kill people without the victim knowing how they had done it. With a flash of magenta light in her palm, Yunwoo pinched the sword stabbing towards her with 2 fingers. Before the terrified gaze of Gu Qin, she exerted her inner strength and turned the blade, slashing towards Gu Qin's neck. But Gu Qin was in late stage of Tier 2 after all. He came over from shock and retreated rapidly. Your reflexes are pretty quick, but you still have to die. After saying this coldly, with a magenta light in her palm, Yunwoo broke straight through his Tier 2 late-stage defense. Ka-ka. Sounds of bones breaking were heard. There were still horror in Gu Qin's eyes, yet his neck had been twisted by that little hand and was drooping at a weird angle. Li Xianer's eyes caught this scene distinctly. A gasp of fright was heard. Almost out of instincts, Li Xianer turned around and fled towards the periphery. Yet with a sudden numbness on her feet, inertia caused her falling forward onto the ground. Her ample bosoms nearly burst due to the impact and she repeatedly gasped in pain. After the pain eased a little, she hurriedly looked at her shank and unexpectedly saw 2 silver needles in it. From where the needles were, numbness and pain tinged with dryness heat had started spreading across her whole body. In the blink of an eye, Yunwoo moved over, coldly looking down at her. Wah, what did you do to me? Li Xianer raised her head and glared at her, yet her voice was slightly quivering. Just now, she became well aware that this Yunwoo before her was not that sickly loser in the Yun mansion anymore. Gu Qin was a Tier 2 late-stage warrior, yet she had managed to pinch Gu Qin's sword with her fingers, break his defense and snap his neck. She had finished all these movements in less than a minute. During the last year, what kind of monster had she turned into? Nothing. Just a tiny little bit of aphrodisiac flower poison, Yunwoo said casually. But Li Xianer's pupils abruptly contracted. Aphrodisiac flower poison was the evilest aphrodisiac. The victim of this poison couldn't have sex, because once they started having sex with someone, they wouldn't be able to stop until they died. Which meant, they had to painfully subdue the surging sexual desire. She actually used such an evil poison on me? A flicker of hatred crossed her eye. But in the blink of an eye, Li Xianer's eyes faintly went red. She crawled beside Yunwoo's feet and started kowtowing to Yunwoo violently. Yunwoo, Miss Yun. What I did previously was wrong. I'm a bitch. I'm kowtowing to you. Please spare me. Please. She was the precious daughter of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue and also an extraordinarily talented girl. And she had never been humiliated this way. Li Xianer secretly decided that she would not let her get away with what she had done to her today. After she found her teacher, she would definitely cut her to pieces. But, was Yunwoo that easy to fool? As regards her petty little tricks, Yunwoo could see through them without even thinking. Watching Li Xianer begging her, Yunwoo was totally indifferent as if she hadn't heard it at all. Having not received any response from Yunwoo for quite a while, Li Xianer felt that the dryness heat, numbness and pain in her were getting increasingly intenser, and correspondingly, the hatred was also getting more and more profound. All of a sudden, a killing intent flashed across her eyes. Under the cover of her kowtowing movements, she conveniently whipped out a dagger from her sleeve and stabbed at Yunwoo's stomach. Now that Yunwoo was so iron-hearted, she wanted her to die together with her. But in the next second, Li Xian'er's face suddenly froze. And then, a magenta warrior defensive power hit her instantly, causing her to fly away and heavily struck a tree nearby. It seems that I can't let you die comfortably even if I want to. Finally, Yunwu's eyes became completely cold. A bloodthirsty killing aura spontaneously surged out of her. It seemed as if the aura could penetrate people's chest and bite their hearts with intangible fangs. You're tier 5. Li Xian'er spit a mouthful of blood and watched Yunwu, eyes full of horror. Yet at this moment, Yunwu didn't want to waste any time talking to her. She walked over, grabbed her foot and dragged her straight towards the depths of the magic beast's forest. A flicker of fear tinged with suspicion crossed Li Xian'er's face. Where are you taking me? Yunwu kept silent. Li Xian'er wanted to resist, yet she discovered that her whole body was numb and feeble with unbearable dryness heat. After a long time's travel, the back of Li Xian'er's clothes was worn and her white back became bloody due to rubbing. But under the influence of the aphrodisiac, Li Xian'er actually enjoyed the pain very much. She clamped her hands on her ample bosoms and kept kneaded them, letting out occasional groans of delight with both satisfaction and pain on her face. Anybody who saw her would be disgusted instead of aroused. Fortunately, Yunwu had better tolerance than common people did. After traveling an unknown distance, Yunwu finally stopped. However, Li Xian'er, who had been twisting and rubbing her body on the ground, became displeased. Keep walking. I got you a final new home. Enjoy yourself. After taking a disgusted, cold glimpse at Li Xian'er who was on the ground, Yunwu exerted her strength and threw Li Xian'er into a rue mouse nest. Rue mice didn't count as high-level magic beasts in the magic beasts forest. They were at tier 1 or tier 2 at the highest. But they usually moved in large numbers and they also lived in groups, so their combat effectiveness could definitely exceed that of a tier 4 magic beast. A rue mouse was about the size of a human palm. The whole cave was full of them. Smelling blood, many rue mice started squeaking. When Li Xian'er landed, she didn't feel any pain. In self-indulgence, she just kept twisting her body which was being tortured by sexual desire. Ah! Suddenly, a piercing shriek of pain came from the cave. In biting pain, Li Xian'er's intoxicated eyes became clear. She seemed to have just found what kind of situation she had been in and her facial expression changed drastically. Those crowded rue mice were squeaking and wriggling, which sent chills down Li Xian'er's spine. Her heart was filled with horror. She subconsciously raised her head, watching Yunwu who was standing at the entrance of the cave, and yelled anxiously, Yunwu. Help! With her arms languidly crossed before her chest, Yunwu squinted her cold eyes and watched silently, the corner of her lips curving into a cold-blooded smile. Seeing that Yunwu didn't show any sympathy, Li Xian'er became anxious. She had only one life. If she died, everything would be gone. Not to mention that she didn't want to die yet. So she went desperate and repeatedly yelled, "Help!" at Yunwu. Unfortunately, there was no response. Ah! Suddenly, another piercing shriek was heard. It turned out that those rue mice were usually asleep during daytime. But her yelling ignorantly had woken up all the rue mice in the cave. The pervading smell of blood whetted the appetite of all the rue mice which had just been awoken. The sounds of them grinding their teeth were heard. The food had been delivered to their nest, and those rue mice knew nothing about etiquette, so they started surging towards her. Ah! Ah! Shriek was heard, along with the sound of biting and gnawing. The odor of blood filled the cave. Watching those rue mice jostling and hungrily gnawing on her, Li Xian'er finally felt the sadness of death. At the moment when Li Xian'er was about to be drowned by the flocks of rue mice, she raised her head and yelled with resentment full of her eyes, "Yunwu! I'll haunt you to death even if I got only my spirit left." From the beginning to the end, Yunwu's black eyes were cold all along and there had never been any compassion at all. Maybe, it was when Li Xian'er was dying that she really came to understand how cold-blooded Yunwu was. Seeing how Li Xian'er had ended up, Yunwu didn't sympathize with her at all. With a cold look, she watched the Ru mice eat the last bit of her and then turned around and left. She had said to herself whoever had bullied her, she would have them pay the price 100-fold. And Li Xian'er was just one of them. Judging by the time she had spent, it should be noon. But those giant trees in the Magic Beast's forest were too exuberant, which made the forest very dark. After dealing with Li Xian'er, Yunwu naturally planned to return to the periphery of the forest and meet Long Qingxie. No matter what, Long Qingxie was the only one who was able to identify live grass. However, only a short while after Yunwu started leaving. She suddenly stopped, confusedly watching the thick purple fog in the woods ahead. No. Technically speaking, that was poisonous smog. In her previous incarnation, she had seen many this kind of thing in Marsan jungle. But she had never encountered one that was purple. How come this poisonous smog appeared during daytime? It obviously wasn't here on my way in. It's so weird, Yunwu couldn't help mumbling, a frown on her face. She didn't know that there had always been poisonous smog in the depths of Magic Beast's forest, and that the shade of the poisonous smog's color indicated how poisonous the smog was. Ever since the purple poisonous smog appeared, there hadn't been a single Magic Beast nearby, so this smog must be highly poisonous. Seeing that the purple poisonous smog was permeating towards the depths of the forest, Yunwu had no choice but to walk deeper into the forest towards the other side of it, hoping to take a detour around the poisonous smog. After 2 hours, she found that she was still on the edge of the poisonous smog. Yunwu finally cursed in a low voice, "Damn it! How vast is this poisonous smog? Girl! I'm afraid you won't be able to detour around it. Although this purple poisonous smog is very common in this Magic Beast's forest, with your current strength, I'm afraid you'll be killed and corroded thoroughly the moment you touch it." At this moment, that old voice came from the necklace at Yunwu's throat. "You woke up, old man." Ever since the last time she entered the forbidden area, the old man had been asleep all along. Yunwu had a faint feeling that it was probably because he had helped her. "You're so impolite, little girl. Just call me Elder White," that old voice said reproachfully. Yunwu gave a self-conscious smile. This old man had offered help to her for so many times, so she realized that maybe her attitude was indeed too impolite. She adjusted her tone and asked, "Elder White, you said that this purple poisonous smog is very common in Magic Beast's forest. Is there any methods to deal with it?" Hearing that she had addressed him differently, Elder White said in his old voice, "This purple poisonous smog is not difficult to overcome. As long as you get an internal dan of a Tier 3 Chilean snake, then you won't have to worry about the purple poisonous smog anymore." An internal dan of a Tier 3 Chilean snake. Hearing this, Yunwu started contemplating. With her Tier 5 early-stage strength plus her previous experience of catching snakes, it would be a piece of cake for her to beat a Chilean snake and extract its internal dan. But this Magic Beast's forest was so expansive. Where could she find a Chilean snake? Besides, with this purple poisonous smog, all those Magic Beasts were either staying in their nests or hiding somewhere. However, when Yunwu was pondering over it, her consciousness suddenly shook and then a piece of information appeared in her mind instantly. Tier 3 Chilean snake, fire attribute. Favorite habitat, grassland. Favorite food, heart-intoxicating flower. This was information offered by Soaring Dragon Scroll. Suddenly, a flicker of delight tinged with surprise crossed her eyes. Because whenever she tried to think about something, she found that Soaring Dragon Scroll which had entered the Hundun Palace would consciously establish a connection with her. And whatever she was thinking, Soaring Dragon Scroll would automatically offer her the information documented on it. It was so abstruse. But then Yunwu's heart started fluttering violently as if she had just found secret treasure. Because when she was connected with Soaring Dragon Scroll, she was informed that what Soaring Dragon Scroll had documented was a comprehensive record of everything on the Shenzhou continent, including the locations of many lost treasures. My God! Doesn't it mean that I own a treasure map that shows me the locations of all the treasures in the world? And it also documented the locations of the other 3 treasure maps that can summon temples. This is way too. If it weren't for that Yunwu was extraordinarily sensible, she probably would have jumped and burst into laugh by now. But she also understood that she could never tell this amazing secret to anybody else. Otherwise, people would never stop hunting her. Take a deep breath. In the blink of an eye, Yunwu regained her usual composure. I have plenty of time for those in the future. Right now, the most important thing is to get an internal den of a Chilean snake. Without any hesitation, Yunwu turned around and walked towards the depths of Magic Beast's forest. Heart intoxicating flower. Back then when she was stealing medicinal materials from the treasury vault of the royal palace, she had happened to get some heart intoxicating flowers. She went straight into the depths of the forest. At last, Yunwu chose a rather broad grassy spot in the forest and took out a heart-intoxicating flower about the size of a palm from her storage space. That flower had been meant to be preserved, so it had been dried. Judging from its look, it should be more than 100 years old. And it was still giving off a faint scent of medicine, so it should be effective. But Yunwu took all the heart-intoxicating flowers out of her storage space, rubbed them into pieces and scattered them over the grass in case the scent was not thick enough. After that, she leaped onto a nearby tree and waited, planning to take action on an appropriate occasion after Chilean Snake arrived. But what happened next went far beyond Yunwu's previous expectation. As the saying went, you should always expect the unexpected. After Yunwu waited for about an hour, a zephyr blew across the grass. Hiss. Finally, that familiar sound made by a snake was heard. A flicker of excitement crossed the eyes of Yunwu, who was hiding on a trunk. It finally came. Tightly holding the dagger in her hand, the figure on the trunk arched her back and was ready to leap down, cut its neck and extract its internal den the moment the Chilean snake showed itself. But in the next second, hiss. Hiss, hiss. A red Chilean snake as thick as a man's fist slowly slithered out of the grass. And shortly after that, 2, 3. As if all the Chilean snakes in this forest had come here, soon the grassy area was thick with red bodies of those snakes. Those hundreds of snakes and their hisses gave Yunwu, who was on the tree trunk, numb scalp. If there were only 4 or 5 of them, maybe she could still handle them. But there were several hundred Chilean snakes down there. How was she supposed to fight them? Damn it! Did I use too many heart-intoxicating flowers? Watching the large numbers of Chilean snake down there, Yunwu could neither jump down nor leave. She didn't know whether she should smile or cry. Hiss. Suddenly, a blood-curdling hiss was heard. Those Chilean snakes which had been enjoying their meal became somewhat restless after hearing that hiss. Hiss. What's going on? Yunwu looked at the source of the hiss. Instantly, her heart lurched violently and her feet slipped, which nearly caused her falling off the trunk. Is the scent of heart-intoxicating flower really so tempting to snakes? She saw that a giant snake, the skin of which looked like iron, was slithering over from the opposite side of those thick grass. The body of the snake was at least twice as thick as a human body. On its head, there was a crimson-yellow crown. Its eyes were as big as lanterns, looking spooky, hideous and ferocious. It was a Tai 4 ironclad snake of earth attribute. It had strong attacking power and was highly venomous. If there was a crimson-yellow crown on its head, then it was about to break through into Tier 5. Yunwu didn't know whether or not she was too lucky. That oncoming ironclad snake happened to have a crimson-yellow crown on its head. It meant that this was an ironclad snake that was about to break through into Tier 5, hiss. Flicking its crimson forked tongue, the ironclad snake spewed a cloud of foul black fog out of its mouth. All the grass and trees touched by the black fog quickly withered and decayed as if they had been corroded by sulfuric acid. So venomous. Yunwoo suddenly felt a blood-curdling sense of crisis. Especially when she saw that the ironclad snake abruptly opened its oversized mouth, spewed out a cloud of foul black fog and slithered towards those Chilean snake which were restlessly on their escape. Those Chilean snakes which were touched by the black fog let out several hisses repeatedly. Although they were corroded by the poison, it seemed that they passed out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the gigantic tail of the ironclad snake swept around and sent tens of Chilean snakes straight into its huge mouth. Watching this devouring scene from the trunk, Yunwoo felt a chill in the heart. This ironclad snake was apparently more ferocious than those Tier 4 wood wolves. Besides, this one was about to break through into Tier 5. If Long Qingxia were here, he might be able to handle it. But she was definitely no match for it. After weighing up the pros and cons, Yunwoo intended to leave. But she was now on a tree trunk near those grass, and the ironclad snake would undoubtedly spot her if she moved. She had just seen with her own eyes how fast it could slither. So Yunwoo had no choice but to slow down her breath and try her best to conceal her existence, hoping that ironclad snake would leave as soon as it ate up those Chilean snakes. It opened its mouth and kept devouring. After a short while, that ironclad snake actually ate all the several hundred Chilean snakes. She had thought that it would leave. But the ironclad snake coiled up right there, with its head down and its eyes closed. That crimson-yellow crown started gleaming and metamorphosing. It seemed that it had devoured so many Chilean snakes in order to break through into Tier 5, hiding on the tree trunk. Yunwoo realized that this was not good. Once it broke through into Tier 5, its strength would grow drastically. In that case, no matter how well she hid herself, it was very likely that the snake would still detect her. Yunwoo's original intention of leaving after it finished its meal had failed completely. Yunwoo clenched her teeth secretly. While the snake was trying to make a breakthrough, that figure on the trunk started moving downwards bit by bit, trying to retreat without making any sounds. But the moment she loosened her grip on the tree, snap, a twig snapped under her feet. Although the sound was faint, it caused an enormous change of emotion in Yunwoo. She turned her head back and saw that the ironclad snake had opened its eerie eyes and was staring straight at her. There had been a moment when Yunwoo believed an intense delight tinged with surprise was glinting in its eyes. It was like the delight of seeing food. Yes, that was delight. Does this ironclad snake actually have intelligence? Don't magic beasts become intelligent only after they break through into Tier 6? Damn it! Yunwoo cursed in muted voice. Without thinking, she started fleeing. The ironclad snake was very excited. Its huge body took a glide and started pursuing Yunwoo hotly. Hiss. The horrible hiss was getting clearer. It had been only several minutes, but Yunwoo felt the ironclad snake was about to catch up with her. A cloud of black poisonous fog shot at her. Yunwoo hurriedly moved aside. That cloud of foul black fog hit the ground and all the plants there scorched and decayed. The black viscous fluid on the ground was bubbling, giving off an extremely rank smell. Yunwoo's facial expression changed immediately. The poison had become more potent than it had been just now, and it also came with scorching heat. It can actually absorb Chilean snake's heat poison and use it to enhance its own attack. Shit! What kind of mutant is this ironclad snake? That ironclad snake seemed to be determined to eat her. The harder she tried to flee, the more excitedly it pursued. Hiss, hiss. Clouds of black poisonous fog were spewed out and plants were scorched here and there. All of a sudden. Thud. A big tree ahead was hit by the poisonous fog and snapped under the corrosion, directly blocking Yunwoo's path. Hiss. The ironclad snake's huge body swept towards Yunwoo. At this moment, Yunwoo also became rather angry. Ever since she came to this eccentric world, this was the first time that she had fled from a magic beast in such an uncollected manner. You goddamn snake went too far. You want to eat me? I'll skin you. She had dared to beat Dragon Prince. Even if she was no match for this snake, she refused to tolerate it playing around with her. When its tail was sweeping towards her, Yunwoo flipped her hand and a big saber was produced from the storage space, Tier 5 magenta fighting spirit flaring up. With an aggressive killing aura, she raised the saber and took a slash at the snake tail. Clang! A blare of ironware clashing together was heard. The ironclad snake let out a hiss. A flicker of surprise crossed in its eerie eyes. Unexpectedly, a bleeding cut caused by that slash had appeared in its ironclad tail. Ironclad snake was of earth attribute, so its defense was far stronger than that of common magic beasts. Besides, it had iron skin. Nobody would be able to hurt it, unless its opponent was a human or a magic beast that was several times stronger than it. This was also the reason why it could do whatever it wanted within this area. Yet this human could actually hurt it. However, Yunwoo was also startled. After her potent slash hit the target, her hands ached and went numb due to the reaction. And the blade of the big saber missed a big piece. That saber slash only gave it a small cut, yet her superlative saber was broken. This ironclad snake's skin was so fucking formidable. Yet this saber slash provoked the ironclad snake. Hiss. A ghost of anger flashing across its terrifying eyes, it opened its giant two-fanged mouth and a blast of foul black fog rapidly shot at Yunwoo. With a frown and a foot movement, Yunwoo dodged aside like lightning. Yet the black poisonous fog permeated due to the wind and some of it touched the purple sleeve around her right arm, corroding it rapidly. Air! She felt a sharp pain in the arm. Yunwoo's facial expression changed. She took off her coat immediately and saw that her inside clothes had also been corroded, along with the skin of her arm, rank bloody liquid flowing out of the wound. Suddenly, a scorching foul smell pervaded the air and she felt dizzy. Yunwoo was horrified. She clapped her hand over her mouth and nose, but it was too late. The ironclad snake gave a string of excited hisses, its giant tail sweeping towards her. On the periphery of Magic Beast's forest, the 4 members of Long Qingxie's team had fulfilled their task almost in an exceptionally smooth manner. Wu Qin waited and waited, yet Li Xianer's team still didn't come back. He became a little worried. Along with the others, he walked towards Li Xianer's previous direction and started searching for them. Young friend, it's been almost 2 days since we entered this Magic Beast's forest. What should I call you? While they were traveling deeper into the forest and searching, Wu Qin turned his head and asked Long Qingxie a question. Dressed in white, Long Qingxie followed them with a slow step. Hearing Wu Qin's question, he answered idly, "You can call me whatever name you want. I'm totally okay with it." Seeing his coquettish, languid look, the 2 female trainees swelled with anger. After he heard the answer, Wu Qin's face slightly froze. Did this man wanted him to lose face in public? He was a little angry. But if he's really the one who possesses that mystical power, then his wild arrogance is tolerable. Then may I ask, what are you looking for in Magic Beast's forest? My students have fulfilled most of their tasks. If you want, maybe they can help you, in a mentor's tone, Wu Qin asked again. Yet how could Wu Qin's true intention escape Long Qingxie's enchanting eyes which seemed to be able to see through people's minds? The corner of Long Qingxie's lips curving into a languid smile, he said blandly, "I think I'll spare you the trouble." However, before he finished his sentence, his voice suddenly paused. A flicker of sullen look crossed his handsome languid face. He abruptly shot his left hand on his right arm. Just now, there was a faint palpitation in his blood. This was a reaction provoked by the blood connector he had planted in Yunwoo's body. This indicated that her right arm had been wounded. Who can hurt her? It's definitely not Li Xianer. Seeing the sudden change of Long Qingxie's air, Wu Qin involuntarily took a step backwards. Unexpectedly, that sullenness and eeriness of him gave Wu Qin a sense of danger and horror. Only those who were more powerful than him could give him this feeling. Who's this guy exactly? Ah! At this time, a female trainee screamed. Mr. Wu. Look! That female trainee dilated her eyes, pointing at the corpse which was being gnawed by two low-level wild leopards not far away. Weren't those yellow clothes the exclusive uniform issued by Mighty King Warrior Academy? Wu Qin and the other trainees looked at it, and their facial expression suddenly changed. In the blink of an eye, Wu Qin swung his hand and a surge of power aggressively shot at those wild leopards. Ow! Giving a roar of pain, the two wild leopards were hit by that potent force and thrown far away. In the next moment, their bodies exploded under the compressive power. This was the earth power that could be manipulated by masters of earth attribute. With a sudden move of his body, Wu Qin rushed forward, followed closely by the other three trainees. Long Qingxie didn't follow but concentrated his attention on finding Yun Wu's current position in this troubled, expansive magic beasts forest. There were only two bodies on the site. Gu Qin and Xian Yi's bodies were not far away from each other but had been badly damaged due to the wild leopard's gnawing. They could only faintly tell that Gu Qin's neck had been wrung into a weird angle. His neck was wrung. By somebody. Somebody actually did this to him. Wu Qin's eyes were full of grief and rage. Gu Qin had been his favorite among all his students. If it had been a high-level magic beast that had killed him, he would have tolerated it, but it had been a particular person who had killed him. And he had lost two talented students at a time. How was he supposed to report this to the academy after he went back? Who did this? Wu Qin roared in grief and indignation. Mr. Wu, come here. Hurry. I found a sword here, the male trainee found something, yelling aloud. Face flushing with anger, Wu Qin instantly shot over with a sudden move of his body. A sword inlaid with rubies stuck deeply into the ground, and there were two footprints nearby, suggesting that somebody had been standing there. After seeing these, Wu Qin's eyes swept around. Signs of a fight could still be seen, but there were only 4 people's footprints. Among the 4 of them, that guy's the only one who can stick a sword deep into the solid ground without using any warrior power. At this thought, utmost anger instantly rose in him. You killed my students, kid. I'll tear you up into pieces. At the same second, the sepulchral look on Long Qingxie's face suddenly changed, but it was not because of Wu Qin's remarks but because he had felt a sudden constriction in the heart when he was trying to sense Yun Wu's current position. She's in danger. Having sensed that she was somewhere in the depths of the southwestern part of the forest, Long Qingxie turned into a white blur after a sudden move of his body, shooting southwest. However, you evildoer! You want to flee? With a sudden move of his body, Wu Qin blocked Long Qingxie's path, eyes blazing with fury. With a dreadful look in his eyes, Long Qingxie said coldly, "Step aside. Your companion killed 2 of my students, and yet you want to flee just like this? Do you really think I'm just a foil? Today, I'm going to take the lives of both of you to compensate for the loss of my students." Seeing that Long Qingxie wanted to flee, Wu Qin became more convinced that it had been Yun Wu who had killed Gu Qin and Xian. In extreme anger, he wielded the sword in his hand with Tier 7 late-stage strength flaring up around him, hurling a surge of earth elemental power towards Long Qingxie. At this moment, Long Qingxie felt that the constriction in the heart was getting increasingly intenser. This indicated that Yun Wu was in a life-threatening situation. Get out of my way! After Wu Qin blocked his path, a furious and sanguinary look almost instantly appeared in Long Qingxie's deep eyes. You'll die here. Wu Qin thundered. You're courting death. Long Qingxie's voice was chilly. With a cold yell of anger, a tide of potent energy rose in him and then an intangible compressive force smashed against Wu Qin, throwing him away. Wu Qin heavily crashed against a big tree behind him and broke one of his ribs, feeling a sharp pain in the back. He raised his head, eyes full of astonishment. So powerful. He's actually stronger than me. A ghost of fear rose in Wu Qin's heart. But then he recalled that 2 of his students had been killed and that 3 other students were still watching him. If he cowered on this occasion, how was he supposed to face all the people in Mighty King Warrior Academy in the future? The look in his eyes became cold again. Clenching his teeth with suppressed pain, he stood up. Before Long Qingxia left, with a sudden move of his body, Wu Qin blocked Long Qingxia's path again. You'll have to give me an explanation before you leave. Explanation? Long Qingxia's voice was extremely cold. Impatiently giving a twist of his hand, he produced a crimson sword. Your deaths will the best explanation. As soon as he finished the last word, at lightning speed, he swung the crimson sword at Wu Qin with a surge of energy that looked like both raging billows and burning flames. Tier 8 Peak Stage. He's a Tier 8 Peak Stage master. At this moment, Wu Qin's face went ashen and all his anger and concerns of face vanished. Wu Qin hurriedly dodged aside. But he forgot that his 3 students were behind him not far away. Pooh, pooh, pooh. They were slashed apart, blood spurting around. His ethereal white coat was also stained with several drops of blood, like a couple of red seductive flowers blooming on it. No. Wu Qin reacted, yelling in shock. But it was too late. The 3 trainees hadn't been standing side by side, but they were still halved from the top of their heads under that eccentric swordsmanship. Blood dyed the ground red. In white, Long Qingxia coldly watched the bloody scene with a sanguinary look on his face. A chilly, eerie ruthlessness rose in him. Like an incarnation of a devil, he stepped over the 3 bloody corpses and quickly disappeared into the depths of the forest. Coming around from shock, Wu Qin gave himself up to grief and wish for death. He had brought 6 students here. Now 5 of them had been killed, and the last one's whereabouts stayed unknown. How was he supposed to explain himself to the academy? Provoked by grief and rage, the elemental power in him started fluctuating so violently that he couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood. He had literally spat blood due to being unduly furious. In the depths of the forest. Being dizzly, Yunwu barely had any time to react when her body got entangled by the giant snake tail. The tail tightened its grip and Yunwu felt that her body was about to be crushed by it. Pain. Pain caused by the hard compression of her internal organs. Hiss. The ironclad snake didn't devour her right away. Ever since it caught her, it had been lifting her up in the air and shaking her, tightening its tail. Just like a cat would always play around with the mouse after catching it. Seeing that Yunwu could barely breathe under the squeezing and was letting out muffled groans in pain, it was very excited. Hiss, hiss. It seemed to be enjoying her grimace of pain. But it also seemed to be sneering, mocking her. Yes. These human expressions glinted in its eerie brutish eyes. Sneering at her. Yunwu was rather annoyed. But she was now entangled by its gigantic body and could barely breathe under the compressive force, let alone move. Shit. How the hell did I let myself end up in this situation? No, she should say, how far did this ironclad snake want to push her? Hiss. That tail which had been shaking her finally stopped and it fixed its eerie eyes on her, flicking the scarlet tongue. But all of a sudden, that yellow crown on its head started glaring. It was shiny yet gave her a blood-curdling sense of horror. Was it going to break through into Tier 5? Right at this moment, its scary oversized mouth, from which the tongue was flicking, suddenly opened wide, and it moved its tail, planning to devour Yunwu with its hideously fanged mouth. It turned out that the reason why it had been playing around with her was because it wanted to wait for this moment of breakthrough to come. Damn it! Does it want to use me to celebrate its breakthrough? No wonder. No wonder it had been pursuing her all along from the very beginning yet hadn't killed her with its poisonous fog. Anger rose in Yunwu, extreme anger. She had survived more than 10 years torturing of Ing Potion, as well as cannibal vines and python nest. Now she was facing only one ironclad snake. How could she just yield and die in its mouth? She felt a sudden surge of fury. When her internal organs were in great pain under the compression, she clenched her teeth and gathered all her strength. Totally indifferent to her struggling, the ironclad snake opened its giant mouth and sent her directly towards it. Foul breath shrouded her. The hideous oversized mouth was so close to her. At this moment, a bizarre magenta light appeared Yunwoo's cold and angry eyes, yet all her fighting force seemed to have vanished in this second. Yunwoo's face abruptly changed. What's going on? Suddenly, in her meridians where strength had disappeared, a tempestuous surge of strange chi soared up out of nowhere. Right after that, it violently rushed into her dantian and a tearing pain exploded in her like it was about to cause a fire and burn her up. What is this? Yunwoo was at an utter loss. She just felt terribly achy all over as if something in her body had been expanding in her and was about to erupt. At this time, that necklace at her throat suddenly gave off a black light. As if it had been woken up, the old voice said, "You actually awoke the sorcery power." Sorcery power? What sorcery power did I awake? At this time, the only thing that Yunwoo knew was that her whole body ached and that a stream of very angry chi had gathered in her chest. Ah! Suddenly, an earth-shaking roar issued from her throat continuously. But at the same time, Yunwoo's heart violently lurched. Because, she saw with her own eyes that the ironclad snake, which had been coiling around her, was abruptly engulfed and instantly burnt to ashes by an intangible black fire. However, what she didn't know was that right at the moment when her roar broke forth, in the sky above the whole Shenzhou continent, winds started blowing and clouds started gathering. The sky was full of dark clouds and the whole continent was shrouded in total darkness. This sudden change startled a lot of people who were hiding themselves. They raised their heads and looked up into the black sky, horror bubbling beneath the surface of their minds. The sorcery power between the heaven and the earth actually woke up. How did this happen? Didn't the sorcery tribe disappear more than 10 years ago? In the main palace of the imperial harem of Zhou dynasty. Crack, a cup was crushed by a hand. In the next second, with a sudden body movement, the figure lying on the bed rushed out of the palace, raising her head to look at the black sky covered by dark clouds. After a sudden change of her face, a sepulchral, hideous look instantly appeared on Xuelu's beautiful face. Sorcery power. Someone actually awoke the sorcery power. There was a tinge of bitter anger in her shrill voice. My queen, the source seems to be in the magic beast's forest in the north. Nobody knew when he had arrived, but a man dressed in black clothes and black robe was standing quietly behind Xuelu. After a sinister look flashed across Xuelu's eyes, she flicked her hand and threw a jade token at him. Send some men there immediately. No survivors. Yes. I'll do it right away, the man in black answered coldly. After a short while, the dark clouds in the sky lifted quickly and it was bright again. That man in black seemed to have vanished at his original position. At this time, Xuelu had also put on her usual air of a noble queen. A gentle voice was heard, "Little pair, I'm going to the mansion of General Yun. Ready the carriage." "Yes. My queen." An eunuch bowed and hurriedly ran out of the palace. In the magic beast's forest. The moment the roar stopped, Yunwoo feebly fell to the ground as if all her strength had been drained. "How do you feel, girl?" With a ghost of concern tinged with surprise, the old voice came from the necklace. "I'm so tired." Yunwoo barely had enough strength to raise a finger. "Of course. This was the first time that you have woken up the sorcery power, yet you released all of them at once. You were very lucky to have not disabled yourself," the old voice said slightly resignedly. Hearing this, Yunwoo was eager to ask him about what had happened exactly, but she was too feeble to do that. "You over-fatigued yourself. Just have a rest and then you'll be fine." When the voice was saying this, a faint black light came out of the necklace and penetrated into her body with a fine stream of warmth, and then her body in prostration regained part of its senses. "Elder White, what happened to me?" Feeling that her strength started coming back, Yunwoo asked, lying on her back. The sun was setting to the west, which indicated that the night was about to fall. The setting sun. There are exuberant tall trees everywhere in Magic Beast's forest. Why am I seeing the setting sun? She blinked and turned her head aside. When she saw the situation around her, Yunwoo gasped deeply. My God! In 100 meters around her, all living things had turned into ashes. The area was completely bare. With every wind, dust and sand swirled. Girl, the sorcery power which has just woken up in you did this. Your body hasn't revived yet, but it activated the sorcery power in you. You really surprised me. There was amazement in the old voice. I did this. But she had just felt that her whole body was in pain, and that a breath was being held back in her chest, so she let it out. This is called sorcery power. But, why do I have sorcery power? Eyes sweeping around, Yunwoo was astounded. At the same time, she secretly mobilized her energy and tried to check her dantian, only to find that there was indeed a stream of weird chi in her meridians, but it was faint, and it seemed as if she wouldn't be able to find it if she didn't try hard to detect it. It seemed that there was only a very small proportion of it left in her body. Elder White hadn't been helping her regain her strength all along. He had stopped when she was just a little better, so Yunwoo's body was still in prostration. It gradually got dark. She had failed to get an internal dan of Chilean snake, and she was in prostration, so it would be very unwise for her to travel in the forest. As a result, before the sun completely sank below the horizon, Yunwoo started retracing the previous route of that ironclad snake, planning to spend the night in its nest. Elder White, you're an elf of Sorcery Tribe's sacred items, so you must know of the Sorcery Tribe, don't you? On her way to the nest, Yunwoo couldn't help recalling something, so she asked. Of course I do. But if you were referring to the current Sorcery Tribe, then I don't know about it either and I can't answer your question. Then what was the prior Sorcery Tribe like? What kind of power is that sorcery power? And why do I have this so-called sorcery? Yunwoo took advantage of this opportunity and spilled out all her questions. Usually, no matter what she asked this old man, he would either say that he couldn't answer her because she had no bond with him, or fall asleep. Today he was so willing to answer her questions, so she seized this opportunity. Elder White paused for a while, then said, You little girl. Are you trying to fish for information from me? Tell me, please. I've already found a way to revive my body anyway, and it's only a matter of time before I bond myself to the sacred item. Do you think you can forge the bond whenever you want? That's easy for you to say. Though Elder White said these words, there was a tinge of amusement in his tone. This girl had managed to wake him up after he slept for over 1,000 years, so he naturally hoped that she would be able to forge a bond with the sacred item. In that case, he wouldn't have to stay in the necklace all the time, and he at least could go outside for a stroll. Are you saying that there are some other requirements apart from reviving my body? Yunwoo frowned. This bond was so tricky. But this was the only way to become a summoner, so no matter what requirements there were, she would fulfill all of them. Of course, there are requirements, but I can't tell you for the moment. As regards those questions you asked, maybe I can give you some information. Yunwoo's eyes lit up. That would be better than giving her nothing. Then tell me. The Sorcery Tribe is an offshoot of the Ancient Immortals. All members of the Sorcery Tribe possess powers that ordinary people cannot imagine, and sorcery power was one of them. The reason why you have it is because half of your blood is Sorcery Tribe blood, so it's very normal that you have sorcery power in you. An offshoot of Immortals? I'm half Sorcery Tribe. Yunwoo was a little surprised, but this hadn't gone far beyond her expectation. She had a sacred item of Sorcery Tribe on her, she had been born with memories, her body was dead yet she could still bleed and feel pain like normal people could. If she had Sorcery Tribe blood on her, then it would explain everything. However, if so, then it would suggest that her natural mother was a member of the Sorcery Tribe. But why would a member of Sorcery Tribe who had power unimaginable to common people marry a mortal and be his concubine? However hard she tried, Yunwoo still couldn't figure this out. But, she did figure out one thing: the queen must have some kind of relation with the sorcery tribe, and the reason why she had tried to poison her must have something to do with her natural mother. But where had her natural mother gone? Had she been caught? Had she returned to sorcery tribe? Or had she been killed? It seemed that she would have to pay a visit to this queen of Zhou dynasty if the occasion arose. Yet at this time, Elder White resumed his talking, "But I have detected your body before, and I found that the sorcery power in you is very thin. It shouldn't have been aroused, but previously you had awoken the purest sorcery power between the heaven and the earth. It was so strange that a half-breed like you could have awoken sorcery power that was so pure." While making these remarks, Elder White himself gradually felt that was indeed very weird. But Yunwoo, who had been listening to him, felt somewhat unconvinced. What's wrong with being a half-breed? In modern times, people of mixed race are the most popular, okay? Night fell. Finally, in prostration, Yunwoo made it to the nest of that ironclad snake. It was just a fairly large cave. There was no grass concealing the entrance of the cave, and there was no sign of any other magic beasts nearby the cave. It seemed that this area was like that ironclad snake's exclusive backyard. After taking a legendary luminous pearl out of the storage space, Yunwoo walked into the cave. The cave was pretty deep, but Yunwoo eventually chose a position near the entrance, because that rank smell in the air deep in the cave was the same as that of the snake, and she found it unbearable. It was late at night. Guh Lulu, the sound of her stomach rumbling was heard in the cave. Yunwoo, who had been sitting cross-legged and performing qi circulation, finally opened her eyes. She stroked her stomach resignedly. "I'm starving." She hadn't had anything for a full day and her body was in severe prostration. She felt as if the gap between her chest and her back had been considerably narrowed. But Long Qingxia had all the food that she had previously prepared. "Long Qingxia, where the hell are you? You said that you would find me. Do you know what time it is?" Long Qingxia had said that he could sense her position, but it had been a full day, yet he was nowhere to be seen. Yunwoo couldn't help looking into the outside of the cave with a frown on her face. However, what she didn't know was that the blood connector he had planted in her body had been erased the moment sorcery power woke up in her. Originally, Long Qingxia had been rapidly coming for her. At the time when the blood connector was erased, his face drastically changed. The disappearance of blood connector meant the death of its host. But he didn't believe that she would have died so easily, because she was the woman that he had fell for, and how was it possible that the woman he had fell for would kick the bucket so easily? But without the help of blood connector, his search for her was completely aimless, just like trying to find a needle in an ocean. At present, in the darkness, that white figure was still persistently searching for her. Jingle, after midnight. Yunwoo, who had been in a light sleep, abruptly opened her eyes. What was that sound? Jingle, Yunwoo waggled her ears. Then she suddenly turned her head back and looked at the depths of the cave where the source of the sounds was. The cave was ablaze with the light of the legendary luminous pearl. Yunwoo stood up, followed the sound and slowly walked towards the depths of the cave. She had already checked the cave and there shouldn't be any other creatures in it. However, Yunwoo had barely arrived at the depths of the cave when a brilliant colorful light was emitted from a hidden corner. The light was so strong that it dazzled her. What the hell is this thing? After about more than 10 seconds, the intense light finally became subdued. It was at this moment that Yunwoo saw clearly that in the hidden corner there was a black fruit tree with trunk as thick as a fist. And the sources of those flickering lights were 7 fruits yielded by the tree. All the 7 fruits were about the size of a mulberry and each of them had its own respective color different from that of the others. There was actually a plant in the nest of an ironclad snake. Every time the ironclad snake breathed, it would spew out poisonous fog, so there was no plants around its cave at all. Unexpectedly, at the depths of its nest, there was a small fruit tree. However, at this very moment, in this cave filled with foul odor, 7 different faint fragrances given off by those fruits were smelled. The frog races were so tempting that they had given Yunwoo a good appetite after she took only one sniff. Was it because she was too hungry? Yunwoo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and subdued an urge to pick the fruits. Immediately, she mobilized her consciousness and established a connection with the soaring dragon scroll, planning to find out what the tree was. When the soaring dragon scroll failed to offer her any information about them, a flicker of amazement crossed Yunwoo's eyes. No record? How come there was no record of it? Soaring Dragon Scroll documented everything on the Shenzhou continent. If there's no record about this tree in Soaring Dragon Scroll, then what the hell is it? Girl, what's this smell in the air? At this time, Elder White's voice was heard. I don't know either, Elder White. Look. What do you think is that? Yunwoo hurriedly pointed at the small black tree in the corner. It was silent in the necklace. Elder White seemed to be contemplating. After a while, Elder White said in a slightly apologetic tone, "It looks very familiar, but I'm too old to recall it." Even Elder White doesn't know. But, girl, this odor is very weird. It may attract a tide of beasts here. You'd better think about what you should do next. A tide of beasts? What's a stream of beasts? Yunwoo was surprised. At this time, roar, 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 the roars of magic beast came over from a distance. Before long, all the magic beasts in this area seemed to have become excited. Ripples of roars spread through the whole forest. Judging by the sound, it seemed that a lot of magic beasts were already on their way to this cave. Haven't the frog races started spreading just now? How come it caused such a fuss so soon? Damn! What variety of fruit tree is this? Yunwoo was speechless with resignation. But soon, she took a dagger and a golden flower pot out of the storage space, bent over and started digging the little black tree. What are you doing, girl? Dig it up and take it with me. Even the Soaring Dragon Scroll and Elder White have no idea what this is, so it must be something uncommon. I have to take this good stuff before leaving. After transplanting the tree into the flower pot, Yunwoo focused her attention on it and neatly sent that little fruit tree into her storage space. The fruit tree went in smoothly. But the 7 fruits of different colors failed to enter and fell onto her palm. Girl, these fruits contain very powerful elemental origins. The level of your bracelet storage space is too low to be able to contain them. You might as well throw them away. As long as you have the tree, you will have another chance. Throw them away. That'll be such a waste. Yunwoo frowned. Roar roar outside, the roars of those flocks of magic beasts were getting clearer. Yunwoo frowned. Suddenly, a crazy idea flashed across her mind, Elder White, what if I eat these fruits? These fruits contain powerful elemental origins. If you manage to absorb them after ingesting the fruits, you will gain the power of those origins. But you're absolutely not ready for this, girl. You won't be able to survive that, not with your current physical conditions, Elder White said in a deep voice. But right after he finished the last word, Yunwoo raised her head and swallowed the 7 fruits of different colors in her hand at once. Girl! Are you insane? Elder White said in consternation. Yunwoo actually gave a crazy laugh. Elder White, there's no need for you to be so startled. You've seen me being crazy before. Besides, you said it yourself, if I manage to absorb it, I'll get the power of origins. The premise is your body can endure it. With your current strength, the power of those fruits is far beyond your tolerance. And you swallowed the 7 of them at once. Were you trying to burst yourself? Elder White, you forgot that my body is already dead. What else can possibly make it die a second death? Girl, do you know that you may end up directly turning into ashes? Even so, I won't regret doing this. That was true. She wouldn't regret it. Because she was gambling, and the stake was her life. If she won, she would be the biggest winner. And if she lost, she would die. Actually, Yunwoo had understood one thing the moment she came to this exotic world. And that was, if she was to survive in this world, she must be more powerful than those who wanted her dead. Otherwise, she would have to drag out an ignoble existence. As long as she was still breathing, she would do whatever she could to stand on the top of the pyramid, and she would never allow anybody to bully her. This was not high-handedness, and it was not wild arrogance either. This was her principle and her pride that she could not live without. So with this opportunity before her, she had chosen to seize it, even if it meant that she might perish. After hearing Yunwoo's words, Elder White became silent. Maybe at that moment he was shocked by the pride in her, or maybe he was infected by her mood. At this time, energy started churning in her body. A stream of aggressive boiling power rampaged in her meridians, approaching her heart. Letting out a muffled groan, Yunwoo clenched her teeth tightly. Cold sweat emerged on her forehead and her breath became painful and unbearable. It is the fire origin, Elder White's voice sounded rather anxious. Fire origin? It seems that something's happening. But it is too fierce. After a moment. In the cave. Ah! The painful scream had just died away when that figure covered by fire leaped upwards and violently impacted upon the wall, as if this was the only way to alleviate the burning pain. Pain. Severe pain. Her whole body was engulfed by flame and all her clothes had been burnt. In darkness, the cave was glaring with light of blazing fire as if it was the flame mountain. All plants around it were scorched, the nearby ground parched and cracked. Roar, those numerous beasts, which had been drawn to the cave, were scared away by the heat as soon as they approached the cave. She felt as if she had been through the pains of being burnt by fire, cut by saber, drowned by water, drilled by pointed stick, buried alive as well as struck by lightning. These torturing pains seemed endless. How long has it been? Yunwoo couldn't remember. She only remembered pains, indescribable pains. Every time a certain type of torture was about to subside, she would think that all this was over, only to find that before she could take a breath, another torture of a different type had just begun. Just like at this moment, electrical current had just disappeared in her body, a weird force started tearing and twisting her blood vessels and entrails. Even the so-called hell couldn't have been worse than the situation Yunwoo was in. Yunwoo felt that she had become numb, and she wouldn't roll even if the pain was as unbearable as that caused by slowly cutting off her flesh piece by piece. She lay on the ground, breathing painfully with parched lips and crimson eyes. Foul blood was oozing out of her skin, which made her look so horrible that she seemed to have just crawled out of rank blood. However, right at this moment, 5 giant flying mounts circled above the magic beast's forest. Their speed changed from time to time as if they were searching for something. Lord Jean, we're already above the middle of the magic beast's forest. We'll have to walk if we go any deeper into it. There were 2 people on each flying mount's back, and at this time, on the back of one of the flying mounts, a middle-aged man in black said respectfully to the old man in a brocade robe who was leading the way. If they kept going deeper into the forests, they might attract the attention of some high-level flying beasts, which would get themselves into some big trouble. Frowning, Jean Long said in a deep voice, "Go a little deeper, and if the jade token still doesn't detect anything, then we'll walk." Yes. The other 9 people all answered respectfully. They had been searching this forest for 3 full days, but the magic beast's forest was so vast that it was very difficult to find someone. They had a jade token which could detect their target, but they still needed to get close enough. But the flying mounts had just flown a little further. Lord Jean, look. The jade token seems to have detected something. A man in black with sharp eyes discovered that the jade token fastened to his belt was giving off a black light. It seems that our target is nearby. Go down and find him. With a severe look in his eyes, Jean Long said in a deep voice, and then immediately leaped down from the flying mount. Seeing this, the other 9 people also leaped down swiftly. Sha sha. 10 figures quietly landed on the ground like 10 swallows. If anybody had seen this scene, they would surely have been startled. They had jumped down onto the ground from such high positions yet managed to land without making any sounds. There was no doubts that they were all King Fu experts. It was rather dark in the magic beast's forest, which made the black light given off by the jade token fastened to Jin Long's belt more noticeable. The target is right ahead of us. Move! Hardly had his voice died away when the 10 figures dashed towards the cave where Yunwu was like greased lightning. All the areas around the cave were bare. The ground dried and seamed, and all the plants withered. When the 10 figures rapidly arrived at their destination, they all frowned on the sight of it. What an eerie place. Lord, judging by the reaction of the jade token, the target should be in that cave. Go in there and take a look. In the cave, Yunwu was in great pain as if she was being sawed by a saw and being twisted at the same time. What was weird was that she detected the 10 people as soon as those people arrived. Girl, those people out there have very intense killing aura, and they seem to have evil intents. At this time, Elder White's fairly weak voice was heard. He had been trying to protect her cardiovascular meridian for 7 days and was somewhat exhausted. Panting heavily, Yunwu clenched her teeth and struggled to prevent herself from making any sounds. She could feel that she was almost there. There was only a small distance between her and success, a very small one. She just needed a small extra amount of time. However, those uninvited guests had no intentions to give her any time. They had barely arrived at the entrance of the cave when a sickening stench of blood assailed their nostrils. When they saw clearly Yunwu, who was in the cave, caked in blood clots, there was a flicker of surprise in all their eyes, and then they all felt disgusted. Lord Jin, this guy looks a little disgusting. It should be the one we've been looking for, an old man in black beside Jin Long said, frowning. This old man was the leader of the 8 assassins in black behind him. Jin Long slightly squinted his eyes and said coldly, there's never been any error in the jade token's reaction. This is our target. The Queen's order is that we eliminate the target as soon as we find it. After they heard his words, killing intents glinted in their eyes. Without any hesitation, they squarely stabbed their swords at Yunwu. The Queen. It was that Queen yet again. Yunwu was lying on the ground, unable to move. Watching those swords stabbing directly at her, she was absolutely furious and resentful. But currently she was totally powerless to fight back. All she could do was merely watching her enemies attack on her. She was furious and unreconciled. All of a sudden, whoever dares to touch her, I'll kill them. An angry yell had just died away when an aggressive power surged up in the air and parried those swords jabbing at Yunwu. The 10 people were startled and failed to react in time. Pop! An upsurge of earth elemental power in the air stormed towards them. Having collected themselves, the 10 people instantly leaped backwards out of the cave. Manipulation of earth element, a trace of sharpness flashed across Jin Long's eyes the moment he landed. Only those who had broken through into Tier 6 were able to manipulate earth element. Whose did this? However, right at this moment, a white figure directly leaped down onto the ground in front of the entrance of the cave. His clothes were white tinged with yellow, as if he had been wearing them for days, but they didn't compromise his intrinsic sultriness and weird enchantment at all. You dared to hurt my woman. Did you ask me for permission first? The corner of Long Qingxia's lips curved into a smile, yet his deep black eyes glinted with exceptionally cold anger. Long Qingxia. It's him. He finally showed up. In the cave, Yunwu's heart lurched the moment she saw that figure, and for the first time she felt relieved. With his presence, she actually felt that she could rest assured. Tiny, are you okay? Long Qingxia gave a glance over his shoulder at the cave behind him, and his heart lurched abruptly when he saw that figure caked with blood clots. What happened to her? In the past few days he had looked everywhere in the central part of this forest, and originally he had planned to search the depths of it, but then he encountered these people, eavesdropped on them and learned that they were looking for someone, so he followed them. He hadn't expected that they had been assigned here by the queen to kill Yunwu. Buy me some time. Don't let them disturb me, Yunwu's weak hoarse voice came. Long Qingxia nodded, a flicker of coldness crossing his eyes. Rest assured. I got this. At this moment, looking at silver-haired Long Qingxia who looked eccentrically sultry, Jin Long and the others coldly narrowed their eyes. Who are you? You dared to get in our way. You're courting death. Death? Haha. It's a natural thing for foes to try to kill each other when they meet. Foes? Jin Long squinted at him. Long Qingxia's eyes swept across those 10 people and the corner of his lips curved, a Tier 9 middle stage warrior. 9 Tier 8 peak stage assassins. It seems that the queen made quite an investment this time. Hearing this, Long Qingxia's face clouded over. You can sense our strength? They hadn't made any moves yet, but he could see through them. How hard can it be to see your strength? I can even see the exact attribute of every one of you. So what do you say? Do you want me to name them one by one? You really know how to bluff, kiddo. Tell me. Who are you? The old man in black said in a cold, deep voice. Like I said, your foe. Just do some careful thinking and see if you offended anyone before. Maybe you'll recall something, Long Qingxia said in a languid tone. Someone I offended? The old man in black was actually contemplating. But at this moment, Jin Long suddenly smiled wryly. You're pretty good, kid. You know how to use conversation as a delaying tactic. Hearing this, a cold look appeared in the eyes of the old man in black. So you're trying to delay us? It seems that you have no idea who you're dealing with. No. 5, no. 7. Finish him as quick as you can and bring me his head. Yes. The old man in black had just finished his remarks when 2 assassins in black behind him charged at Long Qingxia with a sudden flash. Assassination was what assassins were best at, and their swordsmanship was uncanny and unpredictable. The languid look on Long Qingxia's face disappeared, and he slyly squinted his eyes. He wielded his black sword backwards and turned into a rapid blur in the blink of an eye, dashing towards the opponent's head-on. Tier 8 peak stage. A flicker of amazement crossed the mind of Jin Long and the others. They had never expected that this young man would actually be in peak stage of Tier 8. But soon they smiled contemptuously. In a 1 versus 2 fight, he didn't stand a chance even if he was also in peak stage of Tier 8 just as his opponents were. Jin Long didn't think so. He turned his head aside and said to the old man in black standing beside him, "Send your men into the cave and finish that guy." That was what they had come here for. The old man in black nodded, turned his head back and ordered the 6 men behind him, "Go. Do it quick and clean." Yes. The 6 men nodded. With a sudden move of their bodies, they rapidly advanced towards the cave. But at this moment, bang, bang. Unexpectedly, with 2 bangs, the 2 assassins who had just engaged Long Qingxia were hit and thrown far away. The next moment, Long Qingxia's figure shot towards the cave like a typhoon and appeared at the entrance of it in the blink of an eye. The black sword went straight into the chest of the assassin who was the closest to the cave. Pooh! The assassin's face was full of horror and shock. And then the sword was pulled out of his chest. Blood gushed out and stained Long Qingxia's white clothes. At the same time, Long Qingxia launched attack on the other 5 assassins at an unbelievable fast speed. Startled, the 5 assassins retreated rapidly and repeatedly. There was a ruthless, sanguinary look in Long Qingxia's eyes, which were fixed on those assassins, making them terrified. "Whoever attempts to enter this cave will be dead." His extremely cold voice was flat yet full of killing aura. Jin Long and the others were stunned. Did my eyes cheat me just now? Wind attribute? Manipulation of wind element? You have a double attribute? On the whole Shenzhou continent, people who possessed double attributes were extremely rare. Even if they had double attributes, their improvement in cultivation was surely slower than that of common people. Everything concerning martial arts had advantages and disadvantages. But this man not only had double attributes but also had reached peak stage of Tier 8. A firm killing intent crossed the mind of both Jin Long and that old man in black almost at the same time. Anyone like him, if they're not my men, must be eliminated, otherwise they'll never stop making trouble in the future. Since you've come here yourself, then die with the other one. Jin Long's eyes were full of eeriness. As soon as those words were spoken, he flipped his hand and a large knife giving off scorching heat instantly appeared in it. Tier 9 middle stage fighting spirit surged out and he immediately shot towards Long Qingxie with a whooshing sound. It seemed that he intended to kill Long Qingxie with one blow by himself. The look in Long Qingxie's eyes went cold. If you want to kill me, you'll have to work harder on your skills. After saying these in a cold and arrogant tone, Long Qingxie leaped forward as weird flames appeared on his black sword. Under the astonished gaze of the others, he gave a slash towards the opponent head-on. Clang! The two swords covered by flames clashed together, giving off a shower of sparks. An intangible force rippled out. His opponents were astounded again. Triple attribute? You have a triple attribute? Extremely astonished, Jin Long said in a shrill voice after taking a step backwards. The old man in black and the others were also shocked, staring squarely at Long Qingxie. Double attributes were rare enough, but he had a triple attribute. Who's this man exactly? The impact of the clash forced Long Qingxie into backing 3 steps, and his hands ached because of the counterforce. Judging by this, there was indeed a strength gap between peak stage of Tier 8 and middle stage of Tier 9. It seemed that these men sent by the Queen this time did have considerable strength. But at this moment, Jin Long began to take this fight seriously. Elder Black, tell your men to go all out. I want this man dead. If I don't kill this triple attributed man today, he will no doubt be a threat to me in the future. Hearing this, the old man in black raised his hand. You heard Lord Jin, this man must die. Kill him. Yes. 7 assassins, including the one beside him and the 2 who had been thrown backwards, flipped their swords which reflected a cold light, killing aura instantly surging out. In the blink of an eye, 7 figures separated and leaped forward, attacking Long Qingxie's vital parts from 7 different directions. 7 versus 1. You guys really flattered me. Seeing this 7 versus 1 situation, Long Qingxie gave an evil grin. But the next second, with a flicker of cruelty in his eyes, a purple light surged out of his body. Covering in wind element, he instantly turned into a rapid blur and disappeared from his original position. Seeing that their target disappeared, the 7 assassins who were closing in on him were startled. But at this moment, pooh! The sound of a sword violently going in and then out of a body was heard. Long Qingxie's lips curved into a bloodthirsty smile. Under the astonished gaze of the other 6 assassins, with a sudden move of his body, he sank his sword into another assassin's body at lightning speed. Fast. Eerily fast. Jin Long and the old man in black had been watching the fight on the side. Their faces abruptly went cold. What's going on? Even if he was a warrior who could use elemental power, it was impossible for him to move at this speed. Seeing that 2 of the 7 assassins had been killed in the blink of an eye, the 2 went anxious. Use your cloaking techniques, the old man in black thundered. The 5 assassins overcame their horror and collected themselves. With a whooshing sound, the 5 figures instantly vanished. Long Qingxie squinted around but didn't find any signs. These assassins are indeed pretty good. Whoosh! The sound of a sharp weapon splitting the air was heard and it was aimed at Long Qingxie's back. A black figure appeared out of nowhere and rapidly stabbed his sword towards Long Qingxie. The assassin saw his sword sink into Long Qingxie's body. The corner of his lips curved into a cold smile and a flicker of smugness crossed his eyes. But the next second, his face changed, since he didn't feel his sword going into a real body. He saw that Long Qingxie's body twisted and then instantly disappeared. A blur? That was a mere blur. How was that possible? Watch out, the old man in black yelled. Whoosh! Before that assassin could react, the smugness in his eyes was replaced by horror. He lowered his head to look at the black sword sticking in his chest, then raised his head and stared at Long Qingxie. He didn't know when Long Qingxie had appeared before him, neither did he understand how Long Qingxie had managed to do this even at the last moment of his life. Is he a human or a ghost? We're all at Tier 8 peak stage. Though he wields wind element, but he shouldn't be this fast. Pooh! The sword was whipped out. Blood gushed from the wound and stained Long Qingxie's white clothes. However, at this moment, whoosh! 4 black figures appeared behind his back and thrust their swords at his sides and back. I've been waiting for you. Long Qingxie curved his lips into a smile with a terrifying, sanguinary air. The 4 assassins stabbing their swords at him, Long Qingxie leaped upwards. With a surge of wood energy, numerous ropes sprang out of thin air and shot towards those 4 assassins. When the ropes wrapped themselves around them, not only the 4 assassins but also Jin Long and the old man in black were distinctly stunned. With that, their pupils contracted. Wood attribute? That was actually wood attribute. How? How many attributes does he own exactly? On this continent, there are only 5 attributes in total. But he has already shown 4 of them. How's this possible? Both Jin Long and that old man in black were shocked. They had thought that Long Qingxie didn't stand a chance of winning this 7 versus 1 fight even if he was in Tier 9, not to mention he was merely in peak stage of Tier 8. But the current outcome was jaw-dropping. However, at this time, Long Qingxie raised his sword and slashed at the 4 tied-up assassins as fast as he could. Killing aura thickening the air, he wanted to finish these 4 assassins with the sword of fire as soon as possible. So arrogant. You actually want to kill 4 people with 1 blow, someone thundered, a sudden surge of potent energy charging at Long Qingxie head-on. Long Qingxie didn't try to dodge but kept ruthlessly slashing at his targets. Face full of sullenness, the old man in black shot towards Long Qingxie at lightning speed and parried Long Qingxie's blow with powerful sword spirit. Clang! Their powers clashed violently and an intangible force instantly rippled outwards from where the 2 swords collided against each other. The 4 assassins paled visibly when hit by that force. Something sweet welled up to their throats and they nearly spat blood. His power is so strong. At this time, Jin Long vigorously waved his hand and a surge of fire elemental energy fiercely charged at where Long Qingxie and the old man in black had engaged. The 2 swords were separated. You old man. It turns out that you're in early stage of Tier 9, Long Qingxie took a step backwards, raising his eyebrows. He hadn't expected that this old man in black had been using some kind of skill to conceal his true strength so as to trick others into believing that he was only in peak stage of Tier 8. However, he was the leader of the 8 assassins, so it was not too surprising that he was in early stage of Tier 9. The old man in black squinted at Long Qingxie, but deep down in his heart, he was somewhat afraid. The others might not have known it, but the old man in black himself knew very well that he had nearly failed to parry that blow just now, though he was in early stage of Tier 9. Who are you exactly? The man in black robe felt that his palm was nearly numb due to the counterforce of that impact with Long Qingxie's sword. Is that man really just in peak stage of Tier 8? The corner of Long Qingxie's lips curved into an evil smile and he looked handsome and innocent, but those who saw him felt a chill down their spines. Someone who'll take your life. The moment he finished the last word, with a sudden move of his body, Long Qingxie wielded his blood-stained black sword and slashed at the old man. Narrowing his eyes into slits, the old man in black robe wielded his sword and fought back head-on. His Tier 9 early-stage strength was fully displayed at this moment. Aggressive and rapid, all his moves were aimed at Long Qingxie's vital parts. But after only a short while, the old man in black robe seemed to have been forced to an unfavorable situation. Jin Long had been watching on the side all along, and his face became more and more sullen. How's this possible? Although the peak stage of Tier 8 was only one level lower than the early stage of Tier 9, there was a tremendous strength gap between the two. Unexpectedly, with Tier 9 early stage strength, the old man in black robe failed to get the upper hand. What are you waiting for? Go beseech him. Seeing that the four assassins were watching in shock, Jin Long couldn't help but thunder, his face darkening. They numbered 10, and none of their levels was lower than peak stage of Tier 8. But 4 of them had already been killed by this young man who was merely in peak stage of Tier 8, and now even their Tier 9 early stage member failed to get the upper hand. If things keep going this way, this mission might. In the cave, Yunwoo had sat up cross-legged. She was clenching her teeth, trying hard to repress the sharp pain that felt like her body being sawed, but her eyes were on the fight outside the cave. She was somewhat amazed. He's quadruple attributed. What kind of man is Long Qingxie? But at this moment, an uncanny, dangerous feeling flashed across Yunwoo's mind, and with that elder white's voice came, a human who ranks Grand Kung Fu Master is coming. But his chi is a little weird. It's tinged with the chi of the sorcery tribe. Chi of the sorcery tribe? Yunwoo looked outside. However, Jin Long had just yelled and the 4 assassins hadn't made any moves yet when a sudden surge of eerie chi hurtled at Long Qingxie. Long Qingxie had been fighting with the old man in black robe. His face suddenly changed and he instantly somersaulted. Boom, a great crash was heard. Not far away behind Long Qingxie's original position, a huge rock was smashed to pieces after being hit by that surge of qi. Long Qingxie landed and felt a twinge in his arm. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a long bleeding cut in the arm. Frowning, he raised his head and looked upwards. He didn't know when, but a figure in black robe had appeared in the air, an early-stage Grand Kung Fu Master. That was a middle-aged man with a glum look in his eyes, and there was a sepulchral air about him. He was the very man who appeared behind Queen Xuelu on that day. The moment they saw that middle-aged man, Jin Long and that old man in black robe were startled. They immediately bowed respectfully. Lord Zhuo, why did you come? Zhuo Feng peered at Long Qingxie with an eerie look in his eyes. After a while, he looked at Jin Long and asked coldly, this man is the main target that our master wants eliminated? Jin Long replied deferentially, he's not. The target is in the cave. The man gets in our way. Although he's only in peak stage of Tier 8, he's quadruple attributed, and his warrior power is far more potent than that of common people. Really? Hearing this, Zhuo Feng lifted his eyebrows high and looked at Long Qingxie again. He's quadruple attributed. This is the first time that I've heard someone owns 4 attributes. Good. It's been a long time since the last time someone aroused my interest. After a pause, Zhuo Feng curved his lips into a sneer and said, then I'll handle this guy. You go inside and finish the job assigned by master. Hearing this, Jin Long and that old man in black rejoiced secretly. With Lord Zhuo's intervention, they would naturally have less trouble, and this man would surely be dead. The strength gap between a warrior and a Grand Kung Fu Master was different from that between Tier 8 and Tier 9. That was a strength of another rank, and there was no comparability between Grand Kung Fu Master and Tier 9. Jin Long and the others respectfully bowed again. Sorry for the trouble, Lord Zhuo. And then the 6 people walked towards the cave. A flicker of coldness glinted in Long Qingxie's eyes. He had just meant to move to stop them when that mysterious power suddenly hurtled at him again. Thump, the blow hit the ground and a deep dent appeared. What's the hurry? Your opponent is me, Zhuo Feng sinisterly smiled. With a sudden move, that figure in the air shot downwards and landed before Long Qingxie. Long Qingxie frowned, knowing that this grand kung fu master was more difficult to deal with than that old man at Tier 9. But he had said that he would never allow anybody to bother her as long as he was here. Jin Long and the others were about to get past him and approach the cave. A crimson light flashed across Long Qingxie's eyes. He clenched his fists, earth elemental power and wood elemental power surged in him instantly. Meanwhile, a transparent wall of yellowish-brown and green light shrouded the entrance of the cave. Jin Long and the others had just arrived at the cave when the transparent wall blocked their path. What is this? Jin Long frowned. He slashed hard at the wall with his giant knife, but he found that no matter how hard he slashed at it, the force he used always bounced back just as hard. It's so weird, his frown deepened. But at this time, a cold, surprised voice came, a barrier technique? I didn't expect that you're capable of using the long-lost barrier technique. Barrier? This is a barrier technique? Hearing this, Jin Long and the others looked at the transparent wall, amazed. It was said that barrier techniques ranked the third among all techniques, but ever since summoners had disappeared, so had barrier techniques. For centuries, barrier techniques had always been existing only in rumors. They hadn't expected that this weird young man not only was quadruple attributed but also possessed barrier techniques. Who the hell is he? All of a sudden, Zuo Feng burst into laugh, ha ha ha. Good. Very good. It seems that you kid are indeed special. But I like you. However, in the twinkling of an eye, greed glinted in his sinister eyes. Be smart and hand over the secret manual of barrier techniques to me. Maybe I'll let you live. Secret manual? Long Qingxie curved his lips into a sneer. He never needed any secret manuals. Because he himself was a secret manual of utmost uniqueness. I don't have any, he replied coldly. Zuo Feng squinted his eyes with a terrifying, sepulchral air about him. You dare say that again? However many times I say it, the answer will always be the same. However, before Long Qingxie could finish his sentence, a flicker of sullenness flashed across Zuo Feng's eyes and with a hand-clenching movement, part of the space at the entrance of the cave twisted, along with the barrier. Cracks began to appear in the barrier. Kid, though you can use barriers, don't forget I'm a grand kung fu master. In my eyes, this kind of barrier is nothing. As long as you hand over the manual of barrier techniques, I promise I won't intervene in your business. Long Qingxie sneered, you think I'll trust an enemy? Saying this, Long Qingxie slightly squinted. With a sudden move of his body, he brandished the black sword and slashed at Zuo Feng at an extremely fast speed. Zuo Feng sneered coldly. When the sword hit him, his body uncannily twisted and with that the force of the slash rebounded instantly, as if his body was made of rubber. Long Qingxie was forced to take a step back, secretly startled. Chi of sorcery tribe? You're a half-sorcery triber. In the cave. Hearing Long Qingxie's words, Yunwu was stunned. He's half-sorcery tribe. Just like me. Of course not, girl. You're a half-breed, but half-sorcery tribers are those who were corrupted by darkness during evolution because their hearts were not in the right place. They're half-human, half-sorcerer, so people call them half-sorcery tribers. In the sorcery tribe, these people are always exiled and will never be accepted into the tribe. No wonder his chi is so dark and weird. It turns out that he's a half-sorcery triber. Elder White felt what Yunwu was thinking, so he explained. But at this time, hearing Long Qingxie's remarks, Zuo Feng squinted his sinister eyes. You can actually see through my identity? Nobody had ever survived after knowing his true identity. Since you're courting death, I'll grant your request. With an intention to kill, Zuo Feng made his move in a flash, giving Long Qingxie no chance to dodge. Thud. Long Qingxie was hit and throwing backwards, impacting on the face of the hill. His body deeply sank into the rock, dust and pieces of stones everywhere. One punch. Just one punch. On the side, Jin Long stared at Zuo Feng with an odd look in his eyes. Feng glanced at the entrance of the cave and made a hard hand-clenching movement. Crack. The barrier outside the cave instantly broke. Go. Kill the one inside, Feng's grim voice was heard. Yes. Jin Long immediately rushed towards the cave. But before he approached the entrance of the cave, a white figure shot over like a ghost. Eyes eerily crimson, he coldly swept through the enemies with an icy black sword in his hand. Whoever dares to come close will die. Jin Long and the others' hearts lurched and an astounded look appeared in their eyes. If this was not Long Qingxie, who else could he be? Feng was surprised. You took a punch of mine yet survived? Long Qingxie's lips curved up. If I die, you'll feel bored, won't you? Good. Very good. Feng gave a sinister laugh, and with that his figure turned into a rapid blur, hurtling towards Long Qingxie. Craziness flickered in Long Qingxie's eyes and he rushed towards the opponent head-on like lightning. In the twinkling of an eye, a white figure and a black one engaged in a tangled fight. Furious power impacted and coruscated in the air. Aggressive killing aura and compressive force instantly filled the whole battleground. The intensity of the qi almost horrified Jin Long and the others, and their faces changed secretly. This guy is just in peak stage of tier 8, but he can actually break even with a grand kung fu master? Isn't this too weird? However, grabbing this opportunity, Jin Long and the others walked towards the cave, planning to kill the target of this mission first. Unexpectedly, they had just approached the cave when a surge of potent qi forced them to back off. It was Long Qingxie who had spared part of his power and launched an attack on them. But because of this, Long Qingxie got hit by Feng's palm and landed with a thud. Something sweet welled up to his throat and he spat a mouthful of blood with a poo sound. Feng contemptuously sneered, "It seems that you care about the one in the cave very much. Then I'll kill that one first. I dare you." Long Qingxie picked himself up. "Haha, there's nothing I don't dare to do. But I'd like to see how long you can last fighting with me." The moment Feng finished the last word, he launched an attack on Long Qingxie. Then watch carefully, the blood-stained corner of Long Qingxie's lips curved up, and he fought back head-on. Blood had dyed red not only his white clothes but also his black eyes. Seeing that Long Qingxie had been struck down and picked himself up again and again, and that irrespective of those deep wounds, he still tried to stop those who attempted to enter the cave, Yunwu felt a violent lurch in the heart and even her blood couldn't help quivering. This was the first time that Yunwu had witnessed the sanguinary, crazy side of him, and it was also the first time that she saw his frenzy. And all this was for her. Am I really worthy of all this? Yunwu felt both poignancy and pain, the psychological struggle in her becoming fiercer. But at this moment, she had forgotten the painful betrayal happened in her previous incarnation, and he was the only one that she could see. All of a sudden, the violent emotional fluctuation seemed to have exacerbated the sharp pain in Yunwu's body. The pain was so unbearable that she felt that she was about to suffocate. "Girl, why's your blood flowing so quick?" I don't know." Yunwu clenched her fists and her eyes turned red. Gradually, blood started oozing out of her eyes. Thud. Yunwu felt a loud bang in her mind and then piercing pain started spreading. She felt as if her head was about to explode and her whole body ached badly. The agony was so intolerable that she felt she was going to be destroyed. But meanwhile a stream of colorful qi abruptly rushed into her mind and went straight into her spiritual space. What's going on? Yunwu didn't know. She only knew that the moment the stream of colorful qi entered her spiritual space, all the things around her became extremely distinct, as if she could even sense, no, she could even clearly see, those bacteria in the air that were not visible to the naked eye. With blood flowing in them, her eyes were exceptionally clean, purple pupils giving off certain sort of mysterious light. But at this time, black blood flowed out of her mouth. Caked blood on her body and face started shedding bit by bit. At this moment, She was like a snake shedding skin. Even the outer layers of her skin shed with those blood clots, revealing inner skin as white as snow. It seemed as if the violently flowing blood was accelerating her metamorphosis. The great pain gradually subsided. Some kind of mysterious power started converging at her dantian and eventually condensed into 7 small colorful beads which revolved around the golden red bead in an extremely harmonious way. But all of a sudden, Yunwoo felt that something was swelling in her rapidly. Ah, an uncanny roar issued from her mouth uncontrollably. Meanwhile, a colorful light shone through her body and potent elemental power surged out of her. Boom! At this moment, the whole magic beasts forest started quaking eerily, as if there was an earthquake. All the beasts became restless, and those in the forest on a hunt were horrified. However, at this very moment, a figure in purple with disheveled hair abruptly shot out of the cave and hurtled directly towards the white and the black figures in the air. Thud! The impact of furious powers caused an explosion like that of fireworks. Carrying Long Qingxie in her arms, Yunwoo flew down. Long Qingxie's white clothes had been dyed red and his evilly handsome face was ghastly white, but when he saw the woman beside him, the corner of his lips evilly and boldly curved up. "Are you okay?" Yunwoo looked at him. He was covered in blood, and there was even a bleeding cut on his handsome face. Under this circumstance, it was not himself but her that he was worried about. Is this man an idiot? However, it was this him who gave her heart lurches. She placed him on the ground. Wait for a while. Let me finish those troublesome guys first. After saying this, she didn't wait for him to say anything and just leaped upwards. Floating in the air, she looked Suo Feng in the face. Long hair flying, she was an exceptionally beautiful teenage girl in purple. There was a suggestion of chilly air about her, which made her more attractive. Suo Feng watched Yunwoo, slightly astonished by her beauty, but there was also a flicker of pity in his eyes. Because he had sensed a trace of sorcery tribe chi in her. She was the target that the queen wanted eliminated, and yet she was only an early stage of tier 7. In his eyes, killing her was as easy as pinching an ant to death. Early stage of tier 7. Yes. Just now, she had skipped 2 tiers from early stage of tier 5. Of course, Suo Feng and the others didn't know this. Otherwise, they would be in a totally different mentality. In as short as a month, she had turned from a loser who owned no fighting force at all into a tier 7 early stage warrior. What a tier-skipping improvement this was. If the news spread, all the people on the Shenzhou continent would be shocked. You're the one who aroused sorcery power. Watching Yunwoo, Suo Feng asked with an eerie look in his eyes. Aren't you a half-sorcerer? What do you think? Coldly lifting the corner of her lips, Yunwoo asked instead of answering. Suo Feng was dressed in a black robe, and there was something sinister and cold about him. He also had specks of blood on him. It seems that you are the target. Killing intent suddenly flickered in Suo Feng's eyes. Then you'll have to die here. The moment he finished the last word, a surge of eerie, mysterious power hurtled towards Yunwoo. Slightly squinting her purple eyes, Yunwoo didn't try to dodge. With a hand-clenching movement, she twisted the space in front of her and the power coming at her surprisingly vanished into the twisted space. What kind of power is this? Suo Feng was distinctly stunned. Jin Long and the others who had been watching from below were also stunned. But soon a cold and ferocious look appeared on Suo Feng's face. Intense killing aura surged out of him, along with an instant upsurge of fighting momentum. Jin Long, join me. Let's kill her. Hearing Suo Feng's words, Jin Long collected himself. A murderous look on his face, he immediately leaped upwards. 2 versus 1. Yunwoo squinted her eyes. It seems that they're determined to kill me. But judging by Suo Feng's previous words, the queen shouldn't have known I'm the one who has aroused sorcery power, but what happened today is on her regardless. At this time, Suo Feng and Jin Long launched an attack on her together, giving her no chance to speak. Their blows were extreme quick, but Yunwoo managed to dodge aside. Two blasts of potent power impacted on each other, generating a shower of sparks. However, Zuofeng seemed to have anticipated that she would dodge aside, and he produced a black sphere out of thin air and tossed it before Yunwu. Yunwu's purple eyes became vigilant. A bomb? She hadn't expected that people of this world were able to produce bombs. It was too late for her to dodge. Zuofeng curved the corner of his lips into a sinister smile and made a hand-clenching movement. With a crack, the bomb exploded before Yunwu. Bomb! A loud explosion was heard. The blast released enormous amounts of energy along with numerous sparks, filling the whole battleground. The bomb had exploded right in front of Yunwu. The blast should have either killed or seriously injured her. The power of this bomb is pretty good. The queen's done a great job. Watching the explosion site with a sinister look, Zuofeng mumbled in a sneering tone. Jin Long was also smiling grimly. Finally, the mission is accomplished. However, the next second, the smile on their faces froze and their eyes instantly dilated. After the bomb exploded, they had been expecting to see Yunwu's broken body drop to the ground. After all, Yunwu was only an early stage of Tier 7, and that bomb was powerful enough to kill someone at Tier 9. But how did this happen? After the fire caused by the explosion disappeared, a transparent barrier emerged in front of them. Jin Long's pupils abruptly contracted. A barrier? She's also capable of using barrier techniques. The old man in black robe and the other 4 assassins were also astonished. But Zuofeng's face suddenly darkened, and his sinister eyes were full of shock. Not just any barrier. That's a space barrier composed of space element. Space element? Did that mean? Back then at the very beginning when this world came into being, there were originally 7 elements on this Shenzhou continent: wind, wood, water, earth, fire, thunder and space. The last 2 were special elements and they were far more powerful than the other 5. It was a pity that very few people were capable of using the last 2 elements, and in the end almost nobody was. As a result, from a certain point of time on, thunder and spatial elements were gradually consigned to oblivion, and residents of Shenzhou continent believed that there were only 5 elements. But there were still records on thunder element and space element. This was thunder element. Yunwu withdrew the space barrier, a cold look in her purple eyes. Since you're not capable of taking my life, I'll take yours. She flipped over her palm and a flame appeared that was a true flame, not an illusory one, and the heat could be felt distinctly. What? Hearing her words, they were stunned. And then when they saw that flame in the palm of her hand, a flicker of astonishment abruptly flashed across their eyes. A tangible flame? How's that possible? Amazed, Jin Long couldn't help yelling, his voice full of disbelief. The old man in black robe and the 4 assassins were even more astounded. Although warriors were capable of controlling elemental power, they couldn't condense the power into tangible flames, but there was actually a flame in the palm of this woman in front of them. What was going on? But the next second, all their perplexities were replaced by horror. Fireball! She yelled coldly, and 2 fireballs about the size of a fist were formed and thrown towards Zuofeng. Zuofeng's face darkened and he instantly dodged aside. But the fireballs eerily pursued him hotly no matter how fast his speed was. There was a cold smile on the corner of Yunwu's mouth. Her red lips slightly parted. Explode. Boom! A loud explosion rippled through the magic beast's forest, the ground quaking as if there was an earthquake. Energy of the fireballs instantly exploded with furious elemental power violently fluctuating outwards, and the after effects threw Jin Long straight backwards. This explosion was several times more powerful than that of the bomb. The horrified look in the eyes of the old man in black robe and the 4 assassins proved this. Long Qingxia also couldn't help lifting his eyebrows, a flicker of astonishment flashed across his eyes. Having been blasted off his back by the after effects of the explosion, Jin Long was not seriously injured, but his face also changed drastically. Watching Zuofeng, who was in the fire caused by the explosion, he looked terrified. What kind of power is this? After the sea of fire on the explosion site abated, a figure covered with wounds was seen. He stood in the air, half of his body covered in blood. Lord Zua. Jean Long yelled in shock. Half of his body was intact, yet the other half was bloody. His looks were extremely eerie. So this is what they call a half-sorcerer. Seeing the conditions Wu Feng was in, Yunwu started weighing the situation. It seemed that her fireballs were far from enough to handle a member of the sorcery tribe. But if her opponent was a human Grand Kung Fu master, then her fireballs could seriously injure, even kill the opponent. You dare to hurt me? Zhuo Feng coldly glared at Yunwu. I also want to kill you, curling her lip, Yunwu said coldly. A glint of anger crossed Zhuo Feng's eyes and then a sinister look abruptly appeared in them. Those were really big words. I'd like to find out what makes you so arrogant. As soon as he finished his remarks, a surge of dark chi started condensing secretly. Hiss. A python shrouded in black fog appeared out of thin air, and its vicious green eyes looked dark and horrifying. Naturally, a half-sorcerer possessed some sorcery abilities. Seeing that the black fog had condensed into a python, Yunwu didn't know whether it was real or illusory. It was so bizarre. Girl, this is the vitalization power of the sorcery tribe. It vitalizes part of the user's power and shapes it into a magic beast which can actually fight like a magic beast. Elder White's voice slowly came. Vitalization power. It seemed that the sorcery tribe was becoming more and more incredible, but she was also becoming more and more curious about it. The sorcery power in me has already woken up. Does that mean I can also use the vitalization power? Yunwu asked in an undertone. Girl, you've aroused the sorcery power in you, but your body hasn't revived yet, so you can only use the small amount of residual sorcery power in your meridians, and I'm afraid that's not enough to be vitalized. Even if you succeed in vitalizing it, the magic beast it turns into will probably just be a weak one and won't be of much help. Hearing Elder White's words, Yunwu was embarrassed and resigned. This body's so troublesome. Alas. Cheer up. Once your body revives, you will be able to unleash all the sorcery power in you, said Elder White. She didn't know whether he was merely trying to console her. Unfortunately, seeing Zhuo Feng as well as that python, Yunwu didn't find those words very comforting. At least, she had to finish these enemies first before making further plans. Seeing that Yunwu didn't take any further action, Zhuo Feng thought that she was afraid, so he felt a little complacent. This was his secret weapon. Even opponents more powerful than him would suffer. He waved his hand and said to the Black Python, go kill her. The black python seemed to be very intelligent. With a whooshing sound, it pounced on Yunwu with its fanged mouth wide open. Yunwu's purple eyes became vigilant and a piece of information flashed across her mind. She took a sideways move, flipped her hands and two flames reappeared in her palms. But this time she didn't shape the fire into fireballs. Instead, she clasped her hands together. As if by magic, when the two flames were joined together, a faint roar of dragon was heard. Instantly, her hands parted and a fiery red dragon shadow appeared out of thin air. Roar! The dragon shadow abruptly raised its head and gave a roar. If they looked at it carefully, they would find that the shadow was somewhat transparent. This was the first time that she had used this technique and it seemed that she could only shape her power into a dragon shadow. But it seemed mighty enough, just like that red fire dragon in the forbidden area. This was not the vitalization power of the sorcery tribe, but another power called elemental vitalization, the information of which had just been provided by the soaring dragon scroll. As that dragon shadow appeared, the smug look in Zhuo Feng's eyes was replaced by astonishment. You also have vitalization power, he blurted in amazement. But the next second, the dragon shadow's body entangled that black python, opened its mouth, roared and breathed fire which instantly engulfed that black python. Hiss! As if in agony, the black python hissed, and its vitalized body seemed to have been penetrated. It burst and then dispersed like a cloud of black fog, leaving only a puff of black smoke. This is impossible. You. Seeing that his vitalized black python had ended up bursting and disappearing, Zuofeng was shocked and couldn't subdue the horror in him no matter how hard he tried. The vitalization of elements didn't rely on sorcery power but relied on element in the air. Yunwu was not as powerful as he was, but there was abundant fire element in this area, which gave her an advantage of favorable terrain. But actually, even Yunwu herself was astonished at the elemental power in her body. Fire element was only one of the 7 elements, and she hadn't used the other 6 elements yet. But she had already seen how potent the power was. She felt somewhat lucky that she had participated in that high-stake gamble. Of course, the price she had paid during the process was also beyond common people's imagination. You've delayed your death for so long. Now are you ready to die? Yunwu's lips curved, but the look in her eyes was extremely cold. These people must die today. Zuofeng's face instantly became dark. You're not eligible to claim my life, he raged. His figure abruptly vanished into thin air in a weird way. He was nowhere to be found. Yunwu frowned and immediately exerted her spiritual power on the whole battleground, trying to detect the enemy. Her spiritual power was like radar waves, scanning everything in this area. All of a sudden, she felt an uncanny twist and fluctuation of space behind her. Yunwu abruptly dodged aside and that attack coming at her from twisted space caught her blur. 1 times. 2 times. 3 times. None of the sneak attacks hit the target. Zuofeng, who had become invisible by using a special cloaking technique of the sorcery tribe, was rather annoyed, staring at Yunwu indignantly. Don't you want to claim my life? Why don't you stop dodging and just come at me? You coward. Unexpectedly, Yunwu actually stopped moving after hearing Zuofeng's words. Zuofeng sneered secretly, this little girl is so easy to trick. She fell for simple reverse psychology. So stupid. An evil look flashed across his eyes and he abruptly brandished his sword and dashed towards Yunwu at a faster speed. However, the next second, his pupils abruptly dilated. You. Lips curving in a smile, Yunwu said with a seemingly innocent look, your reverse psychology was actually pretty good. You said those words and I actually managed to kill you. With that she exerted more strength. Shoo! A faint sound of the sword sinking deeper into his flesh was heard. Zuofeng lowered his head and saw a sword sticking in his chest where the heart was, the bloody tip of the blade revealed behind his back. Zuofeng stared squarely at Yunwu, his dilated, evil pupils full of disbelief. How come she knew where I would emerge? This sword attack was extremely accurate. It almost seemed as if she had anticipated the precise position where he would appear, and that she had been waiting for him to show up. Seeing the disbelief in his eyes, Yunwu curved the corner of her lips and said in an undertone, don't underestimate your opponent. Although I'm only at tier 7, my strength is more than enough to kill you. Although her frontal attacks were not as lethal as his, she had 7 elemental powers at her disposal now, so it wouldn't be easy for him to kill her. Since he had suicidally appeared beside her, she naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. She pulled out the sword and blood splattered across her purple clothes. However, the next moment, that fiery red dragon shadow in the air abruptly opened its frightful mouth and a breath of furious fire engulfed Zuofeng's body. Ah! Zuofeng's piercing screech of pain was heard. Soon, his body was burnt to ashes. At the same time, Long Qingxie suddenly felt a shiver and a faint white light flashed across his body. As if he had just detected something, a flicker of surprise flashed across his deep eyes. He couldn't help raising his head and stared squarely at Yunwu who was high up in the air. How's this possible? Shoo! Unexpectedly, those people on the ground gasped in horror. How's this possible? You. That was a grand kung fu master. Jin Long's mind went blank, his face full of shock and disbelief. When Yunwoo's eyes swept towards him, he inexplicably quivered and backed off. Yunwoo squinted at him. Seeing the shock on his ghastly white face, Yunwoo couldn't help sneering secretly. She slowly raised her hand and a flame popped out of her palm. What's wrong? You feel shocked? Jin Long subconsciously nodded but soon shook his head, as if he was at a loss how to react. His previous arrogance was nowhere to be seen. Yunwoo suddenly curved up the corner of her lips, but her smile was cold. Her purple eyes were giving off an uncanny light, which gave him chills down the spine, but what was uncannier was that her purple eyes seemed to have the capability to penetrate and constrain his soul like two sharp nails. There's no need to be afraid. You won't feel shock again once you're dead. Jin Long's pupils abruptly contracted when he heard Yunwoo's words, and with that a flicker of horror crossed his mind. He wanted to flee. However, he suddenly discovered that he couldn't turn his eyes, and he couldn't move his body either. How's this possible? Is this soul chain? He was horrified. Yunwoo didn't hesitate. She infused the fire into the dragon's shadow which had just devoured Suofeng. The dragon's shadow became more distinct than before, and the contours of the dragon could be faintly seen. Go! Yunwoo yelled coldly. The fire dragon roared, opened its mouth and dashed towards Jin Long with a whooshing sound. No, his quivering sound had barely been heard when Jin Long's body, transfixed by those purple eyes, was instantly devoured by the fire dragon. A screech of pain was heard. A smell of burnt flesh filled the air. All this happened too fast, and the most important reason for it was mind control technique. Yes. Previously, Yunwoo had briefly browsed the manual of mind control technique stolen from the treasure house. She hadn't expected that after swallowing those 7 fruits, she had not only gained 7 elemental powers but also mastered the first level of this technique, Soul Chain. Mind control technique was a skill that enabled the user to control people with eyes. Yunwoo had just used this technique for the first time, and she distinctly felt that Soul Chain could only temporarily immobilize him but couldn't control his mind. However, faces of the old man in black robe and the others abruptly went ghastly pale after they saw this scene. Tier 9 middle stage Lord Jin has also been. Lord, what should we do? One of those assassins stammered in a quivering voice, horror glinting in his eyes. This girl was too weird. A grand kung fu master and a tier 9 middle stage warrior, who were their most powerful companions, had all been killed. What should they do? Launch an attack together? That would probably be nothing but suicide. The instant that assassin's quivering voice broke off, the eyes of the old man in black robe went sullen and he said in a deep voice, "Let's split up. Go back to report the queen." After saying this, with a sudden flash of his black figure, he disappeared into the dense forest. Seeing this, the other 4 assassins split up and vanished into the forest in 4 different directions. For assassins, a dense forest was the best sanctuary, and especially so when it was gradually dark. Unfortunately, their opponent was a killer who was best at killing people in forests. Yunwoo's lips curved into a cold sneer, but eventually she lowered her head and glanced at Long Qingxie, who was below on the ground. Do some qi circulation first. I'll be back soon. Upon these words, her figure shot off in one of those 4 directions. Watching in the direction that she disappeared, Long Qingxie, who was lying on the ground, felt the eerie change in his body, astonishment glinting in his deep eyes. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.